The manhwa opens on a stark, snowy mountain range, setting the stage for chaos. A group of armed men corner Zeke, the protagonist, who they call a fool for thinking he could escape their flawless encirclement. Their leader demands to know the whereabouts of the ancient relic. Zeke, missing both arms and yet inexplicably cheerful, laughs in their faces. Idiots, he calls them, mockingly asking if they truly believed he would talk. This provokes the group, but one man, the voice of reason in a gang of hotheads, urges restraint. He suggests contacting the main squad via their crystal communicator and reports that they have captured the so-called Northern Phantom. Meanwhile, the men speculate about Zeke's unrelenting determination. One marvels at how he's still alive and questions his obsession with the same relic sought by the Emperor. Another grumbles about the trouble Zeke has caused them and suggests they should have some fun torturing him before handing him over to the main squad. They decide to flip a coin to determine who gets to start. As the coin spins mid-air, Zeke takes advantage of their distraction. In a horrifyingly grotesque display, he bites into one of his severed arms and forcibly reattaches it, declaring that he refuses to die without putting up a fight. The men gape at him in shock, and the scene pauses for a dramatic reveal. Zeke Draper, the failed firstborn of the illustrious Draper household. He reflects bitterly on his past, a lineage blessed with the ability to wield aura and awaken his knights, except for him, the so-called trash. Cast out by his family, Zeke vowed to survive, no matter the cost. As the coin lands, the man designated to start the torture doesn't even have time to celebrate. Zeke has already decapitated him in a single, swift motion. Strength is all that matters. He then turns to the next man, shatters his sword and slices him down the chest, driving home his point. The weak exist only to be crushed and robbed by the strong. With both arms now reattached, Zeke acknowledges the futility of his situation. The men, panicked, dub him a gross irregular and speculate that perhaps decapitating him might work. But Zeke, undeterred, charges into the group. Despite their coordinated sword formation, the scene cuts to reveal Zeke standing victorious, surrounded by a sea of corpses. Yet this triumph comes at a cost. Countless swords are embedded in his back, and he coughs up blood, accepting his impending death. Clutching the relic, a dragon statue carved from a gemstone, Zeke laments his failure to exact true revenge, but consoles himself with having stolen the Emperor's prize. His blood drips onto the relic, releasing a radiant golden aura. A status window materializes, proclaiming his strong will and offering to awaken an ancient power. As Zeke teeters on the brink of death, a mysterious robed figure appears, asking if he agrees to the pact. Zeke, more annoyed than intrigued, mutters a begrudging yes just to silence the voice. The system acknowledges his consent, initiating an irreversible activation sequence. Young Zeke liked to tell the tale of how he ended up looking like a confused knight. After waking up, he found himself staring at his reflection in disbelief. "I can't believe I time traveled," he said, still feeling like swords were stuck in him from a bad dream. He wandered around, realizing he was back at the cradle, the Draker household's fancy trading center, also known as the Dragonslayer. The Draker family boasted being one of the 3 legendary transcendent families, founded by Tarkin Draper. Tarkin was the hero who supposedly saved the continent by slaying the evil dragon Hamad 1,000 years ago. Maybe it was their dragon-slaying blood, but every Draper had a magical aura that made becoming knights a breeze. Except for poor Zeke. Just then, a flashy status window popped up, announcing the admin system was restarting. Zeke jumped out of bed, groaning about another system update. The window continued, saying that the Awakener's soul was confirmed and being aligned. After receiving the Elder's will, Zeke had been given some sort of authority over part of the system. "Great," he muttered, as more screens bombarded him. He laughed at the over-the-top magical visuals, wondering if his artifact was causing the glitch. Nope, it was just a basic status window showing he was now a healer, a rare class. And there was a draconian skill that needed 10 points to unlock. Because why keep it simple? Zeke quickly pushed his hand through the bright screen. He said it was just like those magic videos and that he could use it the same way. Simple enough, he thought. As he got closer, he wondered what class skill meant, since it was written in Draconic, a language no one used anymore. His master had told him that long ago. People chose classes based on what they were good at. Each class had special moves called skills. Since Zeke was a healer, he could use healing skills. Nice, right? Zeke remembered how after knowing he was a healer, his master trained him until he almost died. But his status window said he was now a healer. Deciding to try it, he saw a bright light form in his hand. He thought about when he became a healer in his past life, his 20s. Right after unlocking the Aether Hall, he closed his eyes and focused as a purple mist surrounded him. After a moment, he opened his eyes. "Got it. My Aether Hall is unlocked," he said. Even though his trained body was gone, he was back in the past with all his skills and memories. Not bad compared to before. Just as he was about to explore his new abilities, someone knocked on the door. "Can I come in?" a voice demanded. Zeke was startled and wondered how to turn off the status window since he hadn't looked at it yet. The door opened without waiting. "I can't believe you're not ready," said Decker, Zeke's servant. "Ready for what?" Zeke asked, noticing Decker couldn't see the status window. Decker looked serious. "Seriously, where are we going?" he asked. Zeke remembered being scared of Decker when he was younger. Even though he was 32 now, the fear was still there. Suddenly, the status window appeared again. Activating class skill, Composed Mind. Zeke felt calm instantly. "My nervousness is gone," he said. The skill worked exactly as it said. Decker wasn't happy. "I've told you many times this is important. Are you even listening?" Zeke nodded, but his mind flashed back to a messy scene. Blood on the floor. "Oh, we're talking about the Pancratian test," he sighed. Zeke explained that all Drakers go through training called the Cradle, starting at age 7. For 5 years they had strict training. Each year, teachers watch them in sword fates and no-rules Pancratian matches. "Teachers usually pick who fights whom," Zeke continued. "But sometimes students choose if both agree. No rules mean people get hurt or worse, but these fights decide our classes, so we had to give our all." Claire nodded. Their teacher announced, "Today is Pancratian Day. This is the final test." The students cheered, "Yes, sir." They were all excited. Panmark, the head teacher, said, "Since you're ready, let's start." Again, the students said, "Yes, sir." But some were looking at Zeke, remembering how embarrassed he was last year. "How is he still in the main family?" they whispered. Zeke could hear them all. Panmark called 2 students, Aaron and Goda, to fight. They faced each other, and Panmark signaled them to begin. Aaron threw a punch first, but Goda smirked and kicked him in the chin. Classic rivalry with high stakes. Zeke yawned and said, "The fight's over already. That's what happens when you don't defend properly." Aaron won, and Zeke added, "I used to be scared of this as a kid, but these guys are nothing." A student across the bleachers saw Zeke yawning. He laughed and cracked his knuckles. Finally, it was Zeke's turn. Panmark asked him and his opponent Leon if they were ready. Leon, the guy who had been watching him, said, "I can't believe you're back here again. Didn't get enough of my attention last year?" Zeke said he didn't care and started to remember the last Pancratian when he saw himself bleeding because Leon had beaten him. He thought that Leon had been his opponent every year and probably cheated behind the scenes. He never complained because his family believed he had to overcome dirty tricks to become a true dragon slayer. He wondered why such a trashy person had to be his cousin. In his past life, the 4 siblings of the direct bloodline never met, and there were over a dozen cousins who were happy to bully him. Leon said he had to give Zeke credit for being brave to come back after what happened last time. Or maybe Leon just hadn't learned his lesson because he's so stupid. Zeke's composed mind skill activated, and he said it had been a while since he heard such childish insults. He told Leon he wouldn't be nice if he called him that again. Leon asked what Zeke was going to do, putting his hand on his head and calling him an inferior piece of shit. Immediately, Leon was sent flying from Zeke's punch as he activated a skill called Critical Strike. The window warned him that if he didn't land the hit, he could be countered. Leon started screaming about his face while holding it, while Zeke looked down at his hand, saying he only meant to knock him out, but the skill got activated when he punched as usual. His Aether Hall enveloped his hand. Panmark immediately asked him what he was doing, saying he attacked before announcing the start. Zeke sighed, asking who waits for that on the battlefield, and that those who hit first have the advantage, while smiling menacingly. Panmark immediately got cold sweats, wondering what kind of bloodlust that was. Leon said he was fine, but Panmark didn't know for sure because when he looked down, Leon was pulling blood onto the floor. He told Zeke to continue with the fight, saying he was going to make sure that Trash knew his place. Zeke saw Leon bleeding from the nose. "What a crybaby," Zeke said. thinking Leon was too stupid to learn his lesson. Panmark told him to get ready and waved his hand, telling him to begin. Leon started to dash in and began to ignore the attacks, saying that at first he was scared because of the initial punch, but his fists didn't hurt at all. If Leon just guarded, he was no threat. What Zeke had to watch out for was Leon's left-hand counter. As Zeke came in with it, Leon ducked underneath, grabbed his inner knee and back, and said it was too obvious. But Leon felt a little pressure in the face and cooled off a little. Then Leon started to topple Zeke over, saying he was about to teach him his lesson. But Leon took a devastating blow. Panmark wondered what he just saw as Leon was shaking badly. He looked at Zeke on the floor, speechless, saying there was no way. He thought that the combat IQ of this kid was insane. When Leon dodged the counterattack and tried to take him down, however, Zeke immediately kneed Leon's chin and got out of his grasp. That's on Leon for letting his guard down, thinking he had it. But Zeke keeping his composure was crazy. Panmark wondered if this was really the same Zeke Draker that everybody else knew. Leon started getting a gut-wrenching feeling, wondering why he was unable to do anything. He said he needed to create distance before he could even backpedal. Zeke came in with a thigh kick. As Leon started to lose his balance, but Leon managed to stomp his foot, keeping himself upright, and started to come in with a punch. Meanwhile, Zeke was happy he was able to control his strength this time, and another skill activated called Heightened Senses, which did exactly what it sounded like. As Leon's punch came close, Zeke saw it in slow motion and dodged it. He said this was a familiar feeling, and now that he was used to controlling his ether, it was like he was weaving around Leon's hand. Zeke immediately prepared for a throw, slamming Leon straight into the ground, using his own momentum against him, shattering the arena. Panmark and the other students stood in disbelief, wondering what had just happened. But Zeke continued by using another skill called Precise Stab, elbowing Leon in the chest. It cracked Leon's sternum, causing critical damage. Zeke then raised his hand, saying that even an idiot like Leon needed to learn his lesson, as he started to imbue aura into it. Leon faintly got the word stop, but Zeke didn't listen. He hit Leon in the face over and over as everyone watched in fear. Finally, Zeke stood up with blood on his hands and Leon's. He told them that this was the consequence of messing around and finding out. Then he said his head felt better now that he had sweated a bit, and he could recognize some of the people there. He told them to stop just staring and to come down if they had something to say to him. One of the students stands up laughing and declares that he chooses Zeke as his opponent because he has something to settle with him. Zeke quickly recognizes him as Jackin Verdick, another one of his cousins. Accepting the challenge, Zeke adds a twist, calling out Jackin's servant, Liam Stone, to join the fight as well, saying it would make things fair. Jackin, insulted by this, snaps back, but Zeke mocks him, calling him a dumbass. Jackin grows furious, and both he and Liam step onto the stage. Before the fight begins, Panmark, the instructor, warns Zeke not to make a move until he gives the signal. Zeke, smiling confidently, finds it amusing to face Jackin and Liam, knowing how significant Liam will become in the future. He recalls that Liam, once Jackin's servant, went on to rise through the chaos of war, becoming the legendary mercenary king by uniting the strongest mercenary groups under his leadership. When Panmark finally signals the start, Jackin launches a surprise attack, but Zeke easily catches his fist mid-air. Zeke taunts him, saying he should have listened and attacked together with Liam. Furious, Jackin tries an overhead kick, but feels immediate pain in his leg as Zeke blocks it with ease. Zeke mocks him again, noting he should have paid attention before attacking. Taking advantage of Jackin's moment of distraction, Zeke charges forward. He imbues his fists with aura and lands a series of calculated attacks, exploiting Jackin's injured leg. Zeke lands a low kick and follows it up with a punch that sends Jackin sprawling to the ground, coughing up blood. Jackin, defeated and humiliated, yells for Liam to take over and kill this asshole. Liam finally steps forward, taking his hands out of his pockets. Zeke, noticing Liam's massive build, wonders how a 12-year-old could possibly look so intimidating. He realizes Liam's reach will be a major challenge and decides not to let him take the lead. Zeke charges in, using his aura to increase his speed, and launches a series of rapid jabs, aiming to disorient Liam. The two move across the arena in a blur of motion. Zeke employs a skill called Slash, sending a barrage of attacks to confuse Liam's sight. The students watching are in disbelief, awestruck by Zeke's performance, as this type of northern fist-fighting technique is almost unheard of in the Midlands, where swordsmanship dominates. Even Panmark is surprised, questioning how Zeke knows such advanced techniques. Despite Zeke's impressive display, his body begins to give out. His hands bleed from the relentless attacks, and he struggles to keep up due to his weak physical condition. Meanwhile, Liam remains unshaken, tanking every hit without dodging or counterattacking, and wonders why he's holding back now. Realizing he's at his limit, Zeke decides to end the fight with one powerful move. He begins charging up a devastating attack. Liam watches cautiously, tracking Zeke's movements as Zeke charges forward with his fully powered punch. Before the punch even connects, it generates a visible shockwave, but Liam reacts quickly, dodging to the side and pushing Zeke's arm away. 3 energy rings burst out from the attack, leaving Zeke surprised. He mutters that Liam shouldn't even be able to see ether with his eyes. Liam grabs Zeke's arm and waist, spinning him around as he yells, ready to throw him. But before he can complete the move, Zeke takes advantage of the opening and drives his knee into the back of Liam's head. With Liam stunned, Zeke quickly locks onto his arm and transitions into a flying armbar, attempting a triangle choke. However, because of Liam's sheer size, he remains standing. Liam begins to cough and Zeke taunts him, saying that no matter how strong he is, he can't fight without oxygen in his brain. But Zeke's confidence falters as Liam starts landing powerful blows to Zeke's side, each hit causing sharp pain and making Zeke spit up blood. Despite the brutal exchange, neither of them is willing to back down. Zeke tightens his grip on Liam's throat, while Liam continues pummeling Zeke's side with relentless punches. Both fighters are filled with determination, unwilling to submit. The students watching are split. Some are terrified, while others, including a female student, seem to enjoy the intense fight. Even Panmark, the instructor, is too captivated to intervene. Eventually, Liam's hands go limp and he collapses, unconscious. Zeke, bloodied and barely standing, looks down at his fallen opponent. His side is soaked in blood from Liam's blows. The female student smirks, commenting that she expected nothing less from him, and hints that she's looking forward to challenging him herself. After the match, some time passes, and Decker approaches Zeke, asking if he's okay after such a brutal fight. Zeke assures him he's fine, but Decker requests to check his pulse. Zeke realizes Decker wants to see if he's awakened his aura and reluctantly agrees. Sticking out his hand, Zeke allows Decker to inspect him. As Decker focuses, he sends a blue aura coursing through Zeke's veins, and Zeke realizes that Decker is a blue knight. Zeke explains how aura levels work. Most trainees start as white swordsmen before the blessing rite. After awakening their aura and opening their dantian, they become yellow swordsmen. Knights are those who can freely control aura. Purple knights can reinforce their swords with aura, while blue knights can manifest an aura blade. The highest level, red knight, transcends the limits of aura mastery, a level Liam had reached before Zeke's regression. Zeke mentions an even rarer level, the Black Knight, but there are only a handful of those across the entire continent. Zeke wonders why someone as skilled as Decker, likely a Blue Knight, is acting as his babysitter. He shrugs it off, confident that Decker won't detect his ether, a power so rare that only 2 people in the world can use it. Decker, however, grows suspicious and releases Zeke's hand, asking if he's hiding something from him. In response, Zeke turns the tables, confronting Decker and asking if he is the one hiding something. Caught off guard by the unexpected question, Decker appears surprised, his expression betraying a moment of hesitation. Zeke then says he was just joking. Decker presses further, asking why Zeke has changed so suddenly. Zeke replies that Decker is asking the wrong question. Instead, he should ask why Zeke is only changing now. Decker bows and says he understands, informing Zeke that he has repaired the training room as requested. Zeke appreciates his efficiency and tells him to take some rest. Zeke thinks that if Decker was ordered to keep an eye on him, he might as well keep Decker close to gather information from him instead. He wonders who ordered Decker to watch him. He doesn't think it's anyone from his mother's side, so it must be one of his siblings. When Zeke reaches the training room, he's impressed by its size and notes that the household lives up to its reputation. He decides to check the system interface. Upon opening it, he notices that his slash skill is now proficient, possibly because he used it recently. He realizes that skills activate naturally based on his actions and wonders if new skills he learns will also be added automatically. He questions the difference between a skill and a class skill, since they seem to activate similarly. The Draconian skill also seems suspicious to him, as he doesn't understand what points refer to. He clicks on karma points and learns that they can be earned by killing monsters. He notes that there are plenty of monsters in dungeons, but he needs to be at least a purple knight to enter them. He's also curious about why he regressed to the past and what this system truly is. Thinking that overanalyzing won't help, he decides to focus on training. He picks up a sword, resolving to use anything that helps him get stronger, even if it means exploiting the system or others in the Draker household. He explains that there are two known powers in the world, the aura of the knights and the mana of the mages. Knights reinforce their aura in dungeons, and mages harness mana through circles. These two powers are opposites. If you awaken one, you cannot awaken the other. However, he was unable to awaken either a dantian or a circle for mana. Abandoned by his family, he met his master during his wandering days. His master taught him many things, but the most useful was the healing in Aether Hall. Through the Aether Hall, developed by his master, he could manipulate the energy of nature. Only he and his master are Aether users in the entire world. He practices diligently, giving his all. After a few hours, his hands are bleeding and he feels like he's about to collapse, thinking it's acceptable to stop. But then his class skill healing activates, along with vigor recovery, and his entire body begins to repair itself from the training. He explains that healing is a very rare skill he didn't know existed before meeting his master. If he used it in front of others, they would see him as an anomaly, which is why he couldn't use it during his fight against Liam. He had to heal himself quickly after returning to his room. Now that he's recovered, he continues training again. This is why healing is so powerful. Train, heal, repeat. As it gets dark, he sighs, realizing it's already dinner time. He wonders what to say to Decker, as he has left marks all over the training area. The scene then shifts to a week later at the Cradle cafeteria. Some people are gossiping about how much Zeke has changed, suggesting he might have learned dark magic. Other students hope he continues to humble the top students. In a separate room in the cafeteria, there's a lavish feast. Someone is enjoying the food, eating steak, while others have less luxurious meals. It's his cousin, Raina Turin, who was watching his fight with Liam. There are other people there as well. One student mentions that even if they don't have an appetite, they should eat to have energy for the upcoming swordsmanship duel. This student's name is Owen, and he's talking to Leon, who asks if Owen is trying to irritate him. Owen says he was just being considerate, but guesses that Leon's inferiority complex is causing issues. Leon becomes angry and slams the table, causing Raina to drop her steak. She glares at him for interrupting her meal. Leon grows nervous. Jackin is there too, asking what their plan is to deal with Zeke. Owen remarks that while Zeke's fight was intense and impressive, he'll be lacking in swordsmanship, questioning what Zeke can do when he can barely hold up his sword. Leon tries to agree, saying that Zeke had to get a custom sword because the regular ones were too heavy. He insists it doesn't make sense for him to lose to someone so inferior, and is sure they saw that Zeke only won by luck. Raina seems annoyed by his excuses, and Leon can't even lift his head to look at her. She tells him that if he truly believes that, then he has no right to be a knight of the Draker household, and she walks away from the table. Zeke explained, about the upcoming sword duel, unlike Pancration, this upcoming event used real swords, which was why it caused most of the incidents within the Cradle. He added that a month after the final exams, the Blessing Rite would take place, an event where Drakers awaken their auras. Hanmark called Zeke to step forward. As Zeke carried a comically oversized sword on his shoulder, the crowd erupted in laughter. They teased him, joking that he must be trying to look stronger than he actually was. Amid the laughter, Raina called out to Zeke from the other side of the platform. When Zeke turned to look, he saw her confidently walking toward him. Meeting in the middle, Raina told him she had specifically chosen him as her opponent. Zeke responded that it was a good choice and that he was happy to accept her challenge. Raina noted how effortlessly Zeke was lifting his massive claymore, and remarked that he didn't seem like the same Zeke she had once known, the one who could barely hold a sword. She wondered aloud if his growth was due to his larger stature, observing that his aura now seemed intimidating. However, she quickly dismissed her thoughts, reminding herself to stay focused before their duel. Zeke admitted that facing the Lightning Knight made him nervous, but he promised to do his best, as always. He recalled that Raina, known as the Lightning Knight, had earned her title during the Continental Wars. She was regarded as one of the most talented Drakers of her generation, having awakened her aura years ago, even before undergoing the Blessing Rite. However, she had refrained from using her aura in the Cradle, opting to focus on perfecting her fundamentals instead. Hanmark signaled the start of the duel, and Reina immediately lunged with a thrust. Zeke parried her first strike, but she quickly shifted her position and charged again, pressing her advantage. This time, Zeke couldn't parry. He had to block the attack with his sword, which sent him skidding across the arena. He managed to stop his momentum by leaning forward, but realized that Reina was even stronger than he had expected. Still, he decided, she wasn't unbeatable. As Reina moved in for another attack, the spectators shouted that she needed to stop toying with him. Jackson, another cadet, scoffed, wondering aloud if Zeke was foolish enough to believe Reina was holding back. Now familiar with her style, Zeke began deflecting her strikes with increasing precision. Reina acknowledged that while Zeke's defenses had narrow gaps, his timing and movements made it feel as if he were training her rather than dueling. Their swords clashed again, sending sparks flying, but this time Reina pulled back, clearly winded. Zeke sighed and commented to himself that this was the way the Lightning Knight had always fought, honest and deliberate, as expected from someone obsessed with mastering the basics. However, he concluded that her focus on fundamentals was holding her back, and he resolved to help her break out of her shell. Lowering his stance, Zeke prepared for his next move. Reina observed him cautiously, guessing that he intended to close the gap between them. She reminded herself of her speed advantage and braced herself to react. But while she was lost in thought, Zeke had already closed the distance. He swung his sword downward, forcing her to step aside. She assured herself that as long as there was space between them, she could anticipate his moves. Zeke then began digging into the arena with his sword, creating a wide swipe that sent debris flying toward Reina. As expected, she backpedaled to avoid the attack, but the debris struck her face, catching her off guard. When she regained focus, she realized too late that Zeke had already closed the gap again. He swung his sword directly toward her throat, and she thought the duel was over. However, instead of landing the final blow, Zeke's sword flew through the air and landed far behind him. A faint blue aura surrounded Reina, and the crowd erupted in praise, impressed that she had defeated Zeke without even using her aura. But Handmark, observing closely, revealed that Reina had used the smallest amount of aura, so faint it was barely noticeable. Despite her strict adherence to the promise of not using aura in the cradle, Zeke had managed to force her to break her own rule. Zeke asked Reina what she was doing as she knelt on the ground, clearly furious with herself. Without waiting for an answer, he declared that their duel wasn't over. Then, in a move no one saw coming, he abandoned his sword and landed a fist straight to her throat. The crowd collectively gasped as Reina coughed up blood and collapsed to her knees. Leon immediately shouted in outrage, reminding everyone that this was supposed to be a sword duel and accusing Zeke of foul play. The crowd wasn't having it. They piled on Leon, pointing out that a true knight never abandons their sword and insisting that Reina had already won. Zeke, unfazed by their shaming, stood tall. Because, in his mind, a win was still a win. Reina, struggling to her feet, met Zeke's gaze. He asked if she wanted to continue, but Reina, between labored breaths, refused to back down. She claimed he only managed to land a hit because she let her guard down. Realizing how ridiculous that sounded, she stopped mid-sentence, conceding that if Zeke had used a dagger instead of his bare fist, she'd probably be dead. Swallowing her pride, she admitted defeat. The crowd was stunned. Just weeks ago, Zeke was widely considered the bottom of the barrel, a nobody. Yet here he was, victorious against one of the most talented prodigies among the noble houses. Owen and the others couldn't believe their eyes. The scene shifted to a castle overshadowing a city in flames. Below, knights were tossing bodies into a pit already overflowing with corpses. Inside the castle, a man named William stormed into an office, splattered with blood, incredulously announcing that Zeke had defeated Reina. Sitting calmly amidst the chaos, Abel sipped tea and dismissed William's dramatics, reminding him that he was always too serious. Changing the subject, Abel asked how much time remained until the blessing rite. William replied that they had until the next full moon. Abel stood up, casually stepping over bloodstains, and announced that this was the perfect moment to pay the Draker family a visit. William, concerned, asked if Abel planned to go alone. Abel, intrigued by Zeke's unexpected victory, said his curiosity had been piqued and he wanted to see firsthand what kind of awakening their youngest might undergo. Back in the cradle, a month passed, and on the day of the blessing rite, Zeke sighed to himself, wondering how he had managed to become a red knight in his previous life with such a shitty body. Opening his status window, Zeke reviewed his progress. Many of his skills had leveled up, with one even reaching the expert rank. However, his slash skill stubbornly remained at the beginner level. Zeke explained that once a skill surpassed the expert level, the mastery reset when it ranked up. He also noted that he'd managed to improve his mastery of swift steps, a skill he had gained during his duel with Reina. As he reviewed his progress, Decker approached and informed him they would be leaving in 2 hours. Zeke nodded, telling him to get everything ready. 2 hours later, Zeke climbed into a carriage alongside Decker, commenting that it had been a while since he'd visited the main estate. The Draker family's estate, known as the Dragon's Nest Lair, was situated within the Duchy of Troy. The estate wasn't just any home. It was a storied place where the legend of the Dragonslayer began. Although the Draker family's main residence was located at the Four Seasons Fortress in Middleland, tradition dictated that the blessing rite be held at the Dragon's Nest. The carriage came to a halt, and as Zeke stepped out, the imposing sight of the Dragon's Nest Lair loomed before him. Enmark bellowed, ordering the cadets to stand at attention. Zeke scanned the room and suddenly realized that most of the onlookers were big names, people you'd typically see in the headlines. He figured his family had sent spies too, likely hoping to keep tabs on him. Not that it mattered though. He was convinced they'd lose interest the moment he inevitably failed his awakening. His annoyance deepened as he spotted a familiar face in the crowd. Clenching his fists, he muttered under his breath, wondering what that guy was doing here. Nearby, Abel greeted someone casually, who asked if he was scouting any of the cadets. Abel replied that he wasn't there to scout. He had a more personal reason. His adorable younger brother was among the cadets, and that brother was none other than Zeke. Zeke locked eyes with Abel, but instead of awe, his gaze was filled with disdain. He thought the nickname Lion's Blade was far too noble. Butchering Knight would have been more accurate. He quickly looked away, telling himself to calm down, since there was nothing he could do about it now. In his past life, Abel would never have shown up for the blessing rite, and Zeke couldn't help but wonder if his actions had somehow altered the future. He glanced at his scarred hands, the evidence of his hard work, and decided that if things had changed, this might actually be a good opportunity. Handmark's booming voice snapped him out of his thoughts, announcing the start of the blessing rite and calling Aaron forward. Aaron stepped up, rolling back his sleeve before plunging his hand into the water near the chalice. As blood dripped into the pool, a blue aura began to swirl around him, even enveloping the knight statue beside him. Zeke noted that the aura would flow into Aaron's dantian, expanding it and creating a vortex that spread through his body. As the ceremony continued, Handmark called up the next cadet. Zeke explained that some rare cases awaken not only their aura, but also a powerful trait of the Dragonslayer lineage called mana inhibition. Right on cue, the lights flickered before turning a deep red. The onlookers murmured in surprise as Zeke calmly remarked that those with mana inhibition were as strong as Yellow Knights. Some even rivaled the Red and Black Knights and underwent what was known as pure blood awakening. The source of the phenomenon was revealed to be Reina. Handmark quickly called for special gloves, as Zeke explained that mana inhibition required them to live a normal life. Those who demonstrated a pure blood awakening were formally recognized as Drakers and granted the full support of the family, a package deal that came with unimaginable privileges. One by one, the cadets underwent their awakenings until finally all eyes turned to Zeke. The spectators buzzed with excitement, speculating about what kind of awakening he'd have. Some were convinced it would be another pure blood awakening, given his recent victory over Reina. As Zeke stepped up to the chalice, memories of his previous life came flooding back. The last time he had stood there, it had been a humiliating experience. He hadn't awakened, and the mocking stares of those around him had burned into his mind. But this time, things were different. He had worked hard, gained new abilities, and most importantly, refused to surrender. Determined, Zeke plunged his hand into the water. Blood spilled into the chalice, and the statue beside him began to stir. But then, without warning, it stopped. Confused murmurs spread through the crowd as they wondered what had gone wrong. Even Abel watched in silence as Zeke's frustration boiled over. He muttered bitterly to himself that he'd known nothing would change and blamed Abel for his misplaced confidence. The crowd started gossiping, speculating that Zeke might have failed his awakening. Some dismissed his victory over Reina as a fluke, while others doubted his legitimacy as a Draker. Zeke scoffed, thinking how predictable their reactions were. It didn't matter though. There were plenty of ways to grow stronger without relying on an awakening. Suddenly, his status window appeared, apologizing for a delay in processing. Zeke blinked, puzzled as it announced that missing information had been updated and his class had been unlocked. The message revealed that his talent as a healer had been identified and confirmed, a revelation that left Zeke momentarily stunned. As the red lights from Reina's awakening reappeared, This time from the statue, the crowd gasped. They declared it another pure blood awakening, but instead of starting with a blue aura, Zeke's was red, a rarity. From Zeke's perspective, however, he noticed a golden hue emanating from the statue's sword. The status window continued, explaining that Zeke's awakening had unlocked a unique class called the Immortal, a combination of the talents of a healer and the fighter's bloodline. Abel remained stoic, showing no reaction, while Zeke stood in stunned silence, wondering what on earth it all meant. The crowd is buzzing with confusion about Zeke's golden light. Some are saying it can't be a pure-blooded awakening anymore, while others think the red hue confirms it must be. Then someone suggests the sword statue might be broken because the mana lamps are working fine, and without mana inhibition, it doesn't add up. Basically, no one has a clue what's going on. Abel, always ready to take charge, starts clapping and tells everyone to stop being so serious. He declares that having 2 pure blood awakenings in one batch is a blessing worth celebrating. Like obedient puppies, everyone immediately starts clapping along, pretending they're thrilled. Abel shouts at Panmark to get gloves for the newest member, and Panmark scrambles to obey. When Zeke is handed the gloves, he casually comments on how heavy they are and starts to walk off. As Zeke leaves, Abel watches him with a smirk, and Zeke can practically feel the manipulation coming off him. He has no intention of getting involved with Abel's schemes, but knows he can't avoid this mess entirely. Panmark announces the blessing rite is officially over and invites everyone to a party to celebrate. Zeke, uninterested, decides to slip away and find the training room instead. Abel stops him, calling out and congratulating him on his pure blood awakening. He sticks out his hand for a handshake, but Zeke isn't thrilled. In his head, he's wondering why this guy wants to shake hands so badly. He knows refusing would reveal his hostility, so he reluctantly goes to play along. Then, a sudden flashback of a brutal massacre hits him, and he freezes. His hand drops back to his side, and he refuses the handshake. Abel, caught off guard, laughs it off, saying it's awkward but no big deal. Zeke, in his head, is done with the fake niceties and thinking there's no way he can shake hands with someone like Abel. Abel pats his shoulder instead and says they'll see each other again before walking off. Zeke, pissed, mutters under his breath that they definitely will, but it won't end well. At the party, everyone is hyped up over the 2 new purebloods. Zeke's golden light is the main topic, with people saying it was so shocking they thought it might have been a failed awakening at first. While they're all chatting, Zeke has slipped away, taking off his gloves and sighing in relief after feeling suffocated. He starts thinking about how strange his situation is. Pure blood awakenings usually come with mana inhibition, the ability to shut down mana around them, essentially opposing dragon magic. Without it, things should have gone haywire the moment he removed the gloves. He opens his status window and notices that instead of mana inhibition, he has a skill called mana reflection. It's an active skill that creates a distortion field to nullify nearby mana, which explains why the lamps didn't react. Realizing his class has changed, Zeke thinks back to how he was a rare healer before the blessing rite. Now, he's listed as a unique immortal, something he's never heard of. He recalls how most of the others had basic awakenings with blue auras, and only Reyna had a pure blood awakening before him. His, however, started red and turned gold, which has everyone baffled. He remembers the earlier system glitch, where the bronze statue lost critical information. It clicks for him. The statue doesn't just determine if someone has awakened, it identifies their class. The red light and golden glow were the system struggling to process his unique classification. The red light from Zeke's awakening wasn't some legendary pureblood signal like everyone thought. It turns out it's an ancient relic glitch. The bronze statue, a relic from way before Terrakin, the founder of the Drakers, was originally designed to classify classes, back when that was a thing. Now, it's just used to check if someone has awakened the red light. That was actually a rare class indicator, but everyone's been clueless, calling it pure-blooded awakening instead. Zeke sighs, thinking the family heads are absolute clowns for never catching this. Then he remembers his karma points. He wonders if they're a bonus from the awakening ritual and decides to spend them. Opening the draconian skill menu, he sees skills like Dragon Eyes, Might of the Dragon, and Devour. Dragon Eyes gives detailed info on people. Might of the Dragon makes everyone around him bow to his aura. And Devour is, well, for stuffing his face like a dragon-sized pig. Zeke debates for a bit, but he's not stupid. He opts for Dragon Eyes and Might of the Dragon, skipping Devour because, let's face it, he's not about to waste points on a skill that screams, I eat everything. After unlocking the skills, he decides Might of the Dragon is too risky to use in public and activates Dragon Eyes instead. His eyes transform into glowing dragon eyes and a golden aura radiates around him. Zeke runs into breathing room later. At first, he's unimpressed, muttering that the detailed information it promised seems like a ripoff. But then he notices the statue in the garden, miles away. Now looks like it's right in front of him. He bursts out laughing, realizing this skill is like having telescopic vision on steroids. Suddenly, a status window pops up, asking if he wants detailed info on the statue. Curious, he clicks yes, and instantly, more windows flood his vision, breaking down every object in the room, how they were made, and probably what they had for breakfast. It's so overwhelming that Zeke's head starts pounding, and he nearly collapses into a chair. He figures if all draconian skills are this extra, he might not survive using them often. But then his class skills kick in, specifically healing factor and vigor recovery, refreshing him in seconds. Zeke didn't even mean to use them, but hey, he's not complaining. He notices something else wild. His class skills have all been converted into passive abilities, and their levels have jumped by 1. Healing factor, for example, repairs his body automatically. He grins, calling it low-key broken. Healing magic is usually a limited, energy-draining pain in the ass, but healing factor is infinite. Naturally, Zeke decides to test it. He grabs a knife, slices his arm open like he's auditioning for a metal band, and watches as his skin repairs itself instantly without even a scar left behind. Zeke decides the Academy's 5-year program is way too slow for someone like him. With his insane skills, he figures he'll finish it in 2 years and still have time to flex on everyone. Speaking of which, we find out that the Drakkar Academy is the top knight training school on the continent, located in the prestigious Duchy of Troy. It's so elite that aspiring knights would literally give an arm or a leg to get in. The semester kicks off with thousands of new students flooding the courtyard, laughing and enjoying their first day. Zeke takes a moment to size them up, noting how the high-ranking students look polished and trained, practically like adults, but compared to the elite warriors raised from the cradle, like himself, they're still second-grade. Among the crowd are kids from the so-called great families, who already seem to have marked their territory. These are the branch families propping up the transcendent Drakkar family, and the top 3 with the most clout are the Turin family, Reyna's crew, the Zimmons family, Owen's gang, and Jackin's family. Even their kids are acting like royalty, strutting around with entourages in tow. Zeke chuckles, finding their antics amusing, but ultimately none of his business. He moves on, heading to the high-class dormitory, Platinum Mansion. He smirks, saying, "It's nice being purebred." This place is decked out with all the bells and whistles, training halls, libraries, and facilities most students can only dream of. Even the elite kids from the cradle can't waltz in here without special access. As a pure-blooded awakener, Zeke gets the ultimate perk, his own platinum floor, an entire private level just for him. A maid greets Zeke at the entrance, offering to escort him to his floor. As it turns out, there's a full staff of maids and butlers waiting to serve him. Zeke sighs, saying it's overkill, even for someone with his status. A butler informs him that Decker is waiting in his room. When Zeke enters, Decker is there to deliver a package, a shiny new pair of gloves. Zeke tries them on immediately, noting how much better they feel than his old ones. He's pleased, and Decker is relieved that he likes them. Feeling fancy with his new gear, Zeke jokes about needing a new sword to match and asks for Decker's opinion. Decker agrees wholeheartedly, pointing out that the Duchy of Troy, with its proximity to Giant's Mountain, is known for excellent iron and master craftsmen. It's practically a tradition for Academy students to start with a Trojan weapon. Decker offers to find a skilled smith, but Zeke already has someone in mind. He hands Decker a note with the name Galleon Halbert. Decker hasn't heard of this smith, but agrees to follow orders. He also reminds Zeke that classes start tomorrow and nudges him to review the documents he prepared. Zeke grumbles about Decker's nagging, but gets to work. Later, as Zeke flips through the documents, he appreciates how the Platinum Floor's isolation gives him the freedom to focus on honing his draconian skills without interruptions. Just as he's getting comfortable, there's a knock at the door. A woman enters, apologizing and saying that Floor Master Reyna has sent him a dinner invitation. Zeke is surprised but agrees to go. When he arrives on the roof, Zeke spots Reyna surrounded by a group of guys. He snickers, calling them a cute little southern cartel. Reyna greets him warmly, explaining that her family's people are a bit eccentric. She dismisses the group and apologizes for the scene. Zeke takes a seat, thanking her for her concern. Reyna smiles and says she wants to talk business, but only after the meal. Zeke watches Reyna, calling her out for finally living up to her nickname, the Lightning Knight. He notices she's using her lower abdomen to control her aura, hinting that she's aiming for the prestigious title of Purple Knight. But despite her potential, he can't help but sigh, wondering why her swordsmanship feels so stagnant. Such a waste, he mutters. Fast forward to dinner. After demolishing 4 plates of food, Zeke nervously laughs, admitting he's a big eater but completely outclassed by Reina, who scarfed down double what he managed. Once they're both done, Reina cuts to the chase, telling Zeke to accept her Turin family's support. Zeke immediately raises an eyebrow and reminds her that they're both pure-blooded awakeners. Reina clarifies, saying he's missing the bigger picture. Sure, pure-blooded awakeners get perks, like the exclusive platinum floor, but that's about it. The Academy doesn't hand out personal instructors or centuries of knowledge on a silver platter. Without a support family, no matter how talented he is, he'll fall behind. To drive the point home, she brings up Abel, the youngest White Knight in history, and now the current Black Knight. Even he gets backing from his maternal family, the Zimmons, Owen's clan. Reina also drops a bomb. Her patriarch told her Zeke isn't receiving any support from his maternal family. She insists he needs to accept her family's help. Zeke, without hesitation, waves her off with a firm no. Reina, visibly confused, asks why he's rejecting such a generous offer. Zeke explains it's not about the deal itself. He says he doesn't need more than what he already has as a pure-blooded awakener, but since she treated him to a good meal, he offers her a bit of advice instead. He points out that her sword has too much brute strength behind it, likely because she's overly concerned with impressing the men around her. To prove his point, Zeke pushes against a nearby tree, and all the leaves fall instantly. He then tells her to focus on her natural strength, her fluidity. Instead of meeting attacks head-on, she should use her flexible movements to deflect her opponent's attacks and strike with precision. He assures her this approach will make her exponentially stronger. After dropping this gem of wisdom, Zeke thanks her for dinner and leaves. As he walks away, Reina's hand trembles. She reflects on his words, thinking about her family's legacy as heralds of strength. She realizes she's been too obsessed with living up to her family name, which has unintentionally shaped her rigid sword style. When she was younger, everyone praised her as a prodigy, but no one ever gave her meaningful advice. Until Zeke. She notices one of the fallen leaves in her hand and is shocked to see it's been cut cleanly. In that moment, she starts to wonder, who exactly is this guy? Zeke is out for a peaceful walk, thinking about how insanely overpowered his new class skills are. Despite staying up all night training, he feels totally fine, thanks to his infinite stamina skill. It's so broken that Zeke casually compares his past life, where this place felt like hell, to now, where it's basically heaven. Life's good when you're a pure-blooded awakener. As he strolls, 2 people spot him and call out. Zeke turns to see Owen, the 3rd son of the Zimmons family, one of the big shot families. Zeke remembers Owen as the guy who bullied him while pretending to be all innocent. Owen says he's glad Zeke made it to the special class and mentions the dinner invitation he sent. Zeke doesn't buy the fake friendly act and wonders why Owen suddenly cares. Owen asks why Zeke didn't respond to the letter. Zeke laughs and says, "You seriously think I reply to every little thing people ask?" That's funny. Before Owen can say more, his henchman stomps forward, clearly trying to look intimidating. This towering guy who looks like he lives at the gym starts laughing and mocking Zeke. Turns out he's Durbin Roswell, and he calls himself Durbin the Mighty. Zeke bursts out laughing at the nickname. "You're a cadet who isn't even a knight yet, and you've already given yourself a nickname? That's hilarious," Zeke says, clearly unimpressed. Durbin, clearly not a fan of being laughed at, attacks Zeke. Zeke blocks it, but gets knocked back. Dusting himself off, he sighs. Okay, so the high rankers know basic aura manipulation. Durbin doesn't get much time to celebrate though. Zeke dashes forward faster than Durbin can react, lands a clean punch to his stomach and sends him flying. Durbin hits the ground coughing up blood. Zeke looks down at him and says, "What a joke." Then he turns to Owen. "All right, who's next? Go ahead and pick up your trash." Owen, instead of fighting, walks towards Zeke with a smug grin. "You sure love showing off," he says before turning and walking away. Zeke watches him leave and mutters, "Third-rate villain." Zeke explains the academy setup. There's the normal class, where kids who lack talent are taught to grind their way to success with grueling schedules. Then there's the special class, supposedly for the elites, where students get to chill and pick their subjects. But to Zeke, it's just a fancy name for Cradle Kids Reloaded. He's seriously questioning why it's even called special. Before he can roll his eyes too hard, a teacher tells everyone to shut up because someone important is about to show up. Enter Chief Dean Howard Draker, a supposed war hero who stopped the Eastern Empire's invasion 20 years ago. The guy's hyped as a genius, but Zeke knows better. Turns out, Howard survived by leaking info to the enemy and letting them self-destruct. Zeke's not impressed and mutters something about how this guy's the reason he got kicked out of the academy. Let's just say Zeke's got a grudge. After a brief internal rant about his miserable post-acid me life, slave traders, cartels, you name it, Zeke hears the teacher announce it's time for dragon slaying basics. Zeke groans. In his last life, this took him 2 years to master because he couldn't use aura. Now, he's hoping for an easier ride. Then Andre Draker walks in, the guy running the class. He's young, wearing the prestigious Draker uniform and oozing "I'm better than you" energy. The cadets whisper about how he's some once-in-a-century genius who graduated early and even topped Valhalla. Zeke knows him well. He's not even a pure-blooded awakener, but he's got the Draker name because he's that good. Oh, and he's also a total hard-ass. Andre immediately shuts the class up with a wave of bloodlust that says, "Mess with me and I'll ruin your life." He orders everyone to draw their swords, but when he spots Zeke's oversized blade, he can't help but ask, "What the hell is that?" Zeke, always the show-off, pulls out the sword with a bit of flair, even tossing in some spins. "This," he says smugly, "is my sword." Andre looks like he's about to explode and orders Zeke to step into the arena. "Swords are supposed to match your body, not your ego," he snaps. Zeke knew this was coming but figured he might as well make it entertaining. He pulls out his ridiculously big sword and smirks at Andre, telling him, "This is the one that'll take you down." Andre's clearly not amused and responds by unleashing some serious bloodlust. But Zeke's mental skills are so broken that he doesn't even flinch. Andre draws his glowing rose aura blade and offers Zeke a deal. If Zeke can land a hit, not only will he skip punishment, but he'll also get out of dragon slaying class. Zeke can't believe his luck. "Free pass?" "Bet," he says, already scheming to graze Andre's clothes for an easy win. But he also knows Abel is watching, and showing off too much might backfire. With that, Zeke charges straight for Andre's neck. Andre blocks like it's nothing, and Zeke backs off, saying, "Yep, that's about what I expected from a Blue Knight." Sparks fly as Zeke zips around, trying every trick in the book, but Andre doesn't even move. He just blocks everything, looking bored. The crowd of cadets is losing their minds. 30 minutes in and Zeke hasn't landed a single hit. Andre's hand starts shaking slightly and Zeke notices. "What's the deal, man? Did you skip leg day or something?" he teases. Andre tightens his grip on his sword, but Zeke keeps poking fun. "Your fancy aura cultivation is draining you, huh? It's like holding your breath all day. No wonder you're tired." Andre finally swipes at Zeke, sending him flying backward. Zeke dusts himself off and mutters, "Losing like this? Nah, that's not happening." He decides to push Andre harder and forces him to react on instinct. With a burst of speed, Zeke activates swift steps and starts zooming around the arena, so fast it's hard to keep track. Andre blinks, trying to follow Zeke's movements. This can't be real, he thinks. A cadet shouldn't be this fast. Meanwhile, Zeke is bouncing around like he's got springs in his shoes, looking for just the right moment to strike. Zeke activates critical strikes, aiming right above Andre's head, while Andre's brain is still short-circuiting over how a cadet knows swift steps. Andre turns, locking eyes with Zeke, and for the first time, he feels like he's in real danger. Suddenly, blue aura wraps around Andre's feet as he backpedals, raising his sword to counter. Andre pulls out the big guns, literally, using Sky Slice, the first move from the dragon-slaying arts. His blade glows with intense energy as he swings it down toward Zeke. Zeke, smiling like he's playing with a cheat code, raises his own sword to block. The clash sends Zeke flying, his sword now dented and ready to snap. Zeke groans, muttering, "That hurt like hell," as his healing factor kicks in. He drops his sword and theatrically collapses, letting everyone think he's done. Andre, realizing he went way too far on a student, sheathes his blade and walks away. Frustrated, he announces that Zeke doesn't need to attend class anymore. He even asks the other cadets if anyone else wants to be exempt. Nobody speaks up. Shocker. And Andre cranks up his bloodlust, daring anyone to step forward. Zeke wakes up in the hospital later, smirking about his Oscar-winning performance. He didn't even graze Andre's clothes, but he got what he wanted. Andre broke his no-aura promise, got disciplined, and Zeke scored himself some free time. Total win-win. Reflecting on the fight, Zeke admits Andre's Sky Slice was basic, but from a Blue Knight, it was like getting hit by a truck. Still, Zeke's limitless stamina and healing gave him the edge, but he knows this isn't enough. He needs power so absolute, no one can ever control him. Just as Zeke is deep in thought, a drunk guy stumbles over and starts rambling. The man squints at Zeke, asking if he's Arthur's youngest kid. Zeke's like, "Who's this hobo and why does he reek of booze?" But the guy doesn't smell like alcohol, which throws Zeke off even more. The man keeps ranting, calling Arthur an arrogant jerk and asking how Zeke healed earlier. Zeke plays dumb, but the drunk guy isn't buying it. He says, "Why the charade? You healed from an internal wound instantly." Zeke's mental block skill activates, reminding him to stay cool. No way this dude knows about my healing, he thinks. Zeke brushes it off, saying he has no idea what the man is talking about. The guy smirks, calling Zeke's bluff. Without warning, he swings his hand toward Zeke's head, almost decapitating him without even using a weapon. Zeke's instincts scream, "Kill or be killed!" Grabbing the bed sheets, he throws them at the guy to block his vision. The man dodges easily but compliments Zeke's quick thinking, saying, "You've got some tricks, kid." Zeke's adrenaline spikes as he realizes this guy is no joke. He goes all in, using swift steps, precise stab, and critical strike in one combo. But the drunk dude doesn't even flinch. He grabs Zeke's blade with his bare hand like it's no big deal. That's when Zeke knows he's in serious trouble. The man casually comments on Zeke's adaptability, saying it's almost like he's a mercenary. He stares Zeke down with a dangerous glint in his eye. Zeke's baffled by the sudden appearance of what seems like the final boss. Before he can process it, this drunk dude messes with Zeke's bed like he owns the place. Zeke's wondering, who is this guy? Why is he calling me a mercenary, and does he know something about my past life? The drunkard laughs, calling Zeke a draker who ditched his sword. He tosses the sword back, telling Zeke he's better off being a mercenary than a knight. Rude. That's when it clicks for Zeke. This guy's on a whole different level, like the gap between a toddler with a wooden stick and a seasoned warrior with a claymore. Zeke's thinking, this guy could wipe me out in a blink. Must be a red knight at minimum. The drunkard, who we now know as Dexter, looks at Zeke's sword and mocks him, asking why he's using a bargain bin weapon. Zeke's suspicions rise. Maybe this dude's stronger than a red knight. Just then, the door creaks open and Andre enters. Zeke assumes Andre's there for him, but nope. Andre's all about Dexter. Turns out, Dexter's the Academy's garden keeper. They trade insults like they're in a roast battle. Andre calls Dexter a leech. Dexter calls Andre annoying. Classic bromance. Andre tells Zeke to get back to training once he's done. As Zeke leaves, Dexter shouts, "Swing by the greenhouse if you want to learn something useful." Zeke's like, "Yeah, no thanks," and dips. Dexter mutters, comparing Zeke's attitude to someone named Arthur, which gets Zeke thinking. If Dexter's bold enough to trash-talk Arthur, the patriarch, then Dexter must be Duke Dracar, the Gale Knight, a living legend, a one-man army, and a drunk. Zeke remembers hearing stories about how Duke Dracar disappeared one day without a word. And now he's chilling at the academy? Maybe Andre's only here because of him. Rumors swirl about Dracar's obsession with the color black, which supposedly earned him the Black Knight title. Dexter's clearly interested in Zeke, but Zeke's no fool. He's not here for casual lessons. He wants the good stuff, Dexter's secret techniques. Until then, he's playing hard to get. Meanwhile, in class, Professor Fanon is teaching magic theory, or trying to, since the entire class is in snooze mode. He awkwardly changes tactics when Zeke pipes up, asking about something. Fanon, shocked someone's actually awake, gets super excited and starts explaining like his life depends on it. They have a back and forth while everyone else enjoys nap time. After class, Fanon thanks Zeke for making him feel like a real teacher for once. He even offers to help Zeke anytime and mentions he's an alumnus of the prestigious Delphoa Magic University. Zeke's impressed but keeps his cool, thinking it's not a bad idea to stay on good terms with a mage. Later, Zeke's out and about when he spots Dexter lounging around like he's got nothing better to do. Dexter asks why Zeke never came to the greenhouse. Zeke's about to respond when Dexter interrupts, saying, Don't tell me you didn't get what I meant when I said I'd teach you something useful. Zeke tries to shut Dexter down, saying, I already told you I'm not interested, but Dexter just smirks and asks why. Zeke admits Dexter's clearly talented, but says he's busy with his own training. Dexter laughs. Yeah, sure, you're all about that personal training, huh? Before Zeke can blink, Dexter teleports behind him and casually knocks him out. When Zeke wakes up, groggy and confused, he mutters, Didn't think you'd knock me out. Guess a week was too long for your patience. Zeke looks around and realizes he's in the western greenhouse. Dexter standing nearby, asking if he's awake yet. Zeke's like, wait a second, did this guy just abduct me? Dexter grins, calling it a surprise adoption, and admitting he's really curious about Zeke. Zeke's not buying it. He activates his swift steps skill and makes a break for it, saying, not today, buddy. But Dexter is built differently. He cut Zeke off. Zeke tries again, but Dexter pops up behind him like a bad habit. When Zeke finally stops to catch his breath, Dexter's hand is already on his face, like, you did yet? Frustrated, Zeke asks, okay, what about me has you so interested? Dexter explains he's curious about Zeke's insane healing ability. Zeke smirks. That's it? You're losing sleep over that? Fine, make me tell you, if you can. Dexter chuckles and disappears. Zeke looks around, only for a sword to come flying out of nowhere. He sidesteps it and grabs the handle mid-air. What's this now? He asks. Dexter reappears, saying he wants to make a bet, the same kind his disciple Andre once made with him. Zeke groans, like master, like disciple, huh? Dexter ups the stakes. If Zeke quits, he'll have to spill all his secrets. Fast forward 3 hours, and the greenhouse is a disaster zone. Dexter watches Zeke claw his way out of some rubble, muttering, what is this kid made of? Zeke's stamina and recovery skills are insane. He's taking hits, but he keeps bouncing back. Despite wobbling on his feet, Zeke's ready for more. He thinks, Might of the Dragon might be risky, but against a guy like Dexter, I've got no choice. He channels every ounce of power from his past life, locking into full beast mode. Dexter's actually sweating now, his excitement growing. Now this is more like it, he shouts as Zeke surrounds himself with swirling ether, shattering the ground with swift steps. Zeke goes in for a strike, but Dexter sidesteps with ease, mocking him. Fast, sure, but you're nothing compared to the Turin girl. Zeke doesn't stop, coming in with a follow-up. Dexter, clearly loving the fight, finally pulls his hands out of his pockets and channels some aura. Just as Dexter blocks Zeke's attack, Zeke activates Might of the Dragon. The sheer force startles Dexter, who overdoes his block and accidentally shatters the blade. Dexter stares at the broken weapon, stunned. What the hell was that? He mutters. Zeke takes advantage of the distraction, slamming the ground to kick up a smokescreen. Dexter looks around, but Zeke's already using his dragon eyes to see through the haze. He sneaks up behind Dexter, blade ready. It looks like he's landed the hit, but nope, it's just an afterimage. Dexter's real move? A speed dash so powerful it tears the greenhouse apart. Zeke stands there, catching his breath, as the windstorm dies down. So this is why they call you the Gale Knight, he mutters, realizing just how outclassed he is. Dexter pulls his classic teleport trick, appearing behind Zeke. Startled, Zeke swings at him, but Dexter vanishes again, reappearing right in front of him with a smirk. Let's call it a draw, he says, just before charging his fist with aura and slamming it into Zeke's stomach. Zeke sent flying across the greenhouse, probably breaking the sound barrier along the way. He coughs up blood mid-air as his sword spins dramatically. Before he knows it, his status window pops up like an annoying health app. Fatigue level critical. Consciousness will now be forcibly shut down for safety. His last thought before blacking out? Like master, like disciple. When Zeke wakes up, he's staring at a familiar ceiling. He groans, realizing he's back in his room. Did Dexter bring me here? He sighs and mutters to himself. I almost had him, but then again, he is a Black Knight. He reflects on the fight, realizing his strategies repeating the same attack over and over to lower Dexter's guard, creating an opening with Might of the Dragon, and using his dragon eyes to blind him weren't enough. Dexter's secret move was just too good. Still, Zeke saw it with his dragon eyes. That move wasn't just powerful, it was something Dexter trained his entire body to perfect. He figures this skill must be the reason Andre, who's not exactly a stamina king, made it to Red Knight status. Losing the chance to learn it stings, but the fight wasn't a total waste. Zeke's Might of the Dragon gave even a Black Knight pause, and most small fries would probably wet themselves just from feeling its pressure. Suddenly, his status window pops up again with a new message. Your rank D skill, Swift Step, has upgraded to rank C, High Speed Movement. Your strong will has evolved your soul, and your system has been upgraded. Turns out he now has new features, a mini-map, inventory, and quest book. Zeke's curious about the inventory option and decides to buy it first. The system explains how it works. He can store items by thinking of their name or shape, and storage space depends on the item's size and weight. If he needs more space, he can upgrade it using karma points. Eager to test it, Zeke picks up his sword and tries to store it by saying "save" over and over like a clueless boomer yelling at a smart speaker. After a few awkward attempts, the sword finally disappears into his inventory. Turns out it takes up 2 of his 28 slots. Great! Now he's got the Path of Exile inventory system. To retrieve the sword, he just thinks about it, and boom, it's back in his hand. He's impressed. I thought this was subspace storage, but it's way better, he says. Subspace artifacts are pricey and hard to use, but this inventory system, cheap and upgradable. He realizes how valuable these karma points are and vows not to waste them recklessly. Just as he's planning his next move, there's a knock at the door. It's Decker, who tells him he has a message from Dexter. Zeke, intrigued, says, "Come in." Decker explains that Dexter left a note. If Zeke wants to challenge him again, he's welcome to try any time. Zeke smiles. Guess it wasn't a total loss after all. He interprets the message as a sign Dexter acknowledged the fight as a draw and is leaving the door open for round 2. Zeke's fired up. The opportunity to learn that skill is still on the table. Next time, I'll win for sure. Decker tells Zeke he has some news about the blacksmith he was looking for. Zeke gets excited and asks when the appointment is. Decker hesitates and says, "There's a problem. Galleon, the blacksmith, refused to take the job." Confused, Zeke asks why. Decker explains that Galleon doesn't make weapons anymore. Meanwhile, we see Galleon sitting alone, drinking heavily, looking like he's given up on life. Determined to find out what's going on, Zeke heads to Galleon's workshop, Pupnir's Breath. As he walks up, he comments on how grand the workshop's name is. When he steps inside, he finds the place in complete disarray. He calls out, but no one answers. Zeke starts thinking about Galleon's reputation. He's the legendary blacksmith of the soul, a man who could read a warrior's spirit and forge the perfect weapon for them. His most famous work was the Sword of Radiance, Graham, a masterpiece made as a repayment for saving his life. Zeke wonders what could have happened to bring Galleon to this state. Suddenly, Galleon appears, surprised to see a stranger in his workshop. He growls, "What are you doing here, kid? Get out!" Zeke notices Galleon's temper, which was always moody, but this feels different. Something's changed since the last time he saw him. Without a word, Zeke grabs a bucket of water from the floor and throws it over Galleon, soaking him completely. "Are you awake now?" Zeke asks, tossing the bucket aside. "Why did you reject my commission?" As Galleon notices the symbol on Zeke's gloves, his demeanor changes instantly. He starts bowing, apologizing repeatedly, and says, "I'm sorry for being rude. I'm not taking commissions right now. How can I make anything for others when I can't even create what I want for myself?" Zeke realizes this is deeper than he thought. He reflects on how, in his past life, Galleon was already the greatest blacksmith on the continent. Clearly, this part of Galleon's story, this struggle, was something he chose to keep hidden. But Zeke doesn't have time to wait for Galleon to figure things out on his own. Galleon apologizes again, calling himself a disgrace, but Zeke brushes it off. "Don't worry, show me your so-called failures," he says. They head to the back of the workshop, where Galleon apologizes for the clutter. Zeke isn't bothered. It's kind of charming, honestly, like a graveyard of swords. Zeke begins examining the swords, ignoring Galleon's warnings about how sharp they are. As he picks them up, he tosses them around, saying, "These aren't failures. They're just like the weapons you made back when you were the best on the continent." Activating his dragon eyes, Zeke looks closer and says, "I thought so. Is there a problem with your brazier?" Galleon is stunned. "How did you know that?" Zeke smirks. "I asked first. You're using a unique smelting style, aren't you? Mixing materials to create something lighter and more refined. But the trade-off is low durability." He swings a sword, shattering it against another to prove his point. Galleon is amazed. "You're exactly right. Not only did you recognize my smelting method, but you also pinpointed the flaw." Galleon starts to feel hopeful and tells Zeke he has something to show him. They go back inside, where Galleon lays a blueprint on the table. Zeke immediately recognizes it. It's a design for a magic brazier, capable of adjusting its temperature with magic. In his past life, Galleon shared this design with him after Zeke saved his life. Zeke asks, "If you have the full blueprints, why haven't you built it?" Galleon sighs and explains that the magic tower charges 10,000 gold for the mana energy law blueprint, which is essential for the brazier. Zeke frowns. "That's ridiculous. A family of 4 could live for months on just 10 gold. No wonder it took you so long to become the best. That kind of cost is insane." Zeke realizes Galleon's talent is still there, but he needs help getting back on track. He silently decides to push Galleon toward his breakthrough. Galleon takes a deep breath and tells Zeke his plan. He says, "You're a Draker, and a pure-blooded one at that. If you can help me make this brazier, I'll forge anything you want, no conditions, for the rest of my life." Galleon explains that as a pure-blooded Draker, he should technically have access to the 10,000 gold needed, but he's not the family's guardian knight, so it's impossible. He admits he can't give up on recreating the Sword of Radiance, but the real obstacle is the mana energy laws required for the brazier. That's when Zeke remembers Fawnin, the mage he knows, and laughs. Picking up the blueprint, he tells Galleon, "I'll accept your deal." Galleon stares in disbelief, asking if Zeke is serious. Zeke assures him, "I know someone who can help. I'll ask for a favor and let you know when I have an answer. And for the love of everything, stop drinking." Galleon immediately breaks down in tears, bawling like a baby and thanking Zeke profusely. With tears and snot dripping everywhere, he clings to Zeke, promising to serve him forever. Zeke, thoroughly disgusted, yells at him to back off and heads out to the carriage. As Zeke makes his way to the research building, he's annoyed at how the magic tower has the audacity to charge such insane fees for something so basic. Thankfully, Fawneman's specialty is designing mana energy laws, so he feels optimistic. But as Zeke searches for the research lab, he hears the sound of someone getting beaten in a nearby alley. Curious, Zeke checks it out and finds a group of bullies tormenting a kid. The scene triggers a flashback of Zeke's past life, where he was beaten and humiliated by Leon Conrad. Back then, Leon made Zeke apologize while crying and even forced him to lick the ground as everyone laughed. Zeke clenches his fists, disgusted that the same behavior is happening again. In the alley, Leon is ranting and beating the kid, furious over Zeke's reputation as a pure-blooded awakener. "There's no way that rat could surpass me," Leon shouts, slamming the kid's head into the ground. Zeke steps into the alley and calls out to Leon with a mocking tone. "Already found yourself a new target, huh?" His grin quickly vanishes as he releases a wave of aura. "You've got 3 seconds to plant your heads on the ground." Leon freezes, shocked by Zeke's confidence and the pressure he's radiating. "How dare you talk to me like that? You're just an inferior bastard," Leon yells, ordering his men to attack. Zeke sighs, clearly unimpressed. "Don't blame me for what happens next," he mutters. The first attacker swings, but Zeke easily dodges and counters with a punch to the face, knocking the guy flat. The other two hesitate but charge in. Zeke uppercuts one and sidesteps the other's punch, grabbing the man's arm and using his momentum to throw him into the wall. Not stopping there, Zeke dashes forward, knees another guy in the face, and delivers a brutal kick to the last one's chin. Within seconds, the entire crew is down, groaning in pain. Leon is left trembling, completely terrified. "This can't be real. Is this really the same Zeke?" he mutters, his voice shaking. Zeke walks toward him calmly, his presence radiating menace. "No need to be scared. You already know. It only hurts for a moment," he says coldly. Panicked, Leon draws his sword, his hands shaking so badly it's a miracle he doesn't drop it. "Stay back. I'll cut you if you come any closer." Zeke raises an eyebrow and smirks. "Drawing your blade outside the training grounds. You do know what that means, right?" Leon audibly gulps. Zeke's voice turns serious as he says, "If you're ready to face the consequences, I'll retaliate in the name of honor." The bloodlust Zeke releases is enough to make Leon's knees buckle. Realizing he's way out of his league, Leon drops his sword and starts apologizing, begging for mercy. Zeke stares at him, completely unfazed, and doesn't say a word. Leon starts shaking like a leaf, his face pale as he pleads with Zeke for mercy. The guy's so terrified he ends up wetting himself, calling Zeke "sir" between sobs. Zeke lowers his blade slowly, remembering how he used to grovel like this in his past life, begging Leon for mercy. He sighs, muttering, "I can't believe I was bullied by someone like this." Without warning, Zeke swings his blade upward, slicing off Leon's ear. As blood splatters, Zeke coldly says, "I'll be taking Azira's payment," gesturing to the severed ear on the ground. Leon collapses, bawling and clutching the side of his head, trying to stop the bleeding. Zeke grabs Leon by the hair, pulling his face up. "If I see your ear reattached the next time we meet, I won't stop at just an ear, I'll take your whole head." Then, as if to make his point clear, Zeke slams Leon's face into the concrete, leaving blood splattered everywhere. Zeke stands, dusting himself off and letting out a tired sigh. As he starts to leave, a voice calls out to him from behind. It's Liam, the kid Leon and his crew were bullying. "Why did you help me?" Liam asks. Zeke turns back, shrugging. "I didn't help you, I was helping myself." Without another word, he walks away, thinking to himself that maybe hanging around Galleon is starting to rub off on him. He almost said something cheesy back there. Zeke finally makes it to the research lab and presents the blueprint to Fanon, asking if the brazier can be built. Fanon wastes no time saying, "Yes, it's possible, but let me explain the details first." He breaks it down. The design is simple, but the problem lies in the core, which is crucial for power output. The core needs to be small, produce a lot of power, and have a way to adjust output without delays. Zeke asks again if it can be done. Fanon offers two options. The first, redesign the core from scratch. The downside, it'll take 10 to 15 years to complete. Zeke, startled, is like, "Yeah, no thanks." The second option, use a high-compression mana stone as a substitute for the core. This would save time, but the problem is cost. High-compression mana stones are rare ancient artifacts, and just finding one would cost over 3,000 gold. Zeke frowns. "That's not ideal," he mutters, realizing that 15 years is way too long, but 3,000 gold is a fortune. He sighs, thinking about how much he needs the Sword of Radiance. Everyone assumes he's an aura user thanks to his performance at the Blessing Rite, but the truth is he can't use aura at all. The effects back then were created with aether and healing techniques, not aura. Aether is powerful but incredibly hard to control, and without it, Zeke can't use most sword skills. Even the skill his master taught him, Spirit of the Soul, only lets him reinforce his body and swing his blade. Aura, on the other hand, is way more versatile and user-friendly, which is why he desperately needs that sword. As Fanon rambles on about how impressive the blueprint is, Zeke suddenly gets an idea. "Why didn't I think of this before?" he says, grinning. Fanon looks confused and asks where he's going. Zeke laughs and replies, "Relax, I'm not asking you to take 15 years. I'll bring you a high-compression mana stone myself." Zeke starts explaining the history of the Golden Age. After the Liberation War, when humanity defeated the dragons, countless relics and magical artifacts were discovered in dragon layers. Among them was the high-compression mana stone, a relic so powerful it could fuel the mana needs of an entire village. As Zeke arrives at the central library of Drakor Academy, he reflects on its importance. Despite being rarely used, the library is carefully maintained because it's believed to have been established by Tarkon Drakor himself, the Hero King. Zeke is determined to find what he needs there to bring his plan to life. While expanding a records room, relics from the Golden Age were discovered. This led to the Magic Tower and the Archmage of Nirvana, one of the top dogs in the three great families, getting involved in the excavation. Over a few months, countless relics were uncovered, and the news spread everywhere. Or at least, that's how the story will go in about 10 years. As Zeke heads to the library, he sighs. Nobody's found these relics yet. Heck, no one even knows they exist. He mutters to himself about how it could take all day to search and still come up empty-handed. Then, with a flick of determination, he activates his dragon eyes. It doesn't take long before he spots a faint reddish glow on one of the floor tiles. Bingo, he says, tapping the tile and noticing it sounds hollow. Using his aether, he materializes a blade and carefully cuts out the tile. This is one of the only things I can do with the spirit scale skill my master taught me, he says. Aether is powerful and versatile, but it's also exhausting, and we see him visibly straining. This is still too much for me, he mutters, prying the tile loose. Beneath it, light spills into the library as he uncovers a hidden passage. After climbing down, he covers the opening, making it look like he was never there. Now, deep underground with only a torch, Zeke mutters, "The newsletters never mentioned how far these ruins went." Suddenly, he hears footsteps, and his heart skips a beat. "It's supposed to be decades before anyone finds this place," he whispers, wondering if someone beat him to it. He peers around the corner, ready for trouble, but relaxes when he sees a group of skeletons holding shovels and pickaxes. "Looks like a lich handiwork," he says, pulling his sword from his inventory. With a confident grin, he dashes forward, slicing through the first skeleton and shattering the second shovel before taking it out too. A status window pops up telling him he earned 2 karma points. Zeke blinks, surprised. "Oh yeah, I forgot I could get points for this," he says, shaking his head. Then a thought hits him. Wait, this is the perfect chance to farm points. Zeke's mood shifts instantly as he runs forward, gleefully smashing skeletons and calling them his lovely points. In no time, he's racked up 20 skeleton kills and 40 karma points. He pauses to check his status window, thinking about what to unlock next. Deciding the minimap is a solid choice, he buys it. When it appears, Zeke grins. This is just like a magic map. He notices a button on the bottom left, taps it, and the map switches from 2D to 3D, showing the full layout of the ruins. "Now this is the good stuff," he says, impressed. But one room on the map glows red, and he wonders why. Curious, he taps the glowing room. The system asks if he'd like directions to the grave of the Dragonslayer's storage room. Zeke's eyes widen. "No way! It took the search parties days to find this, and I found it in minutes!" He clicks yes, and the system starts guiding him like a fantasy version of Siri. Following the map, Zeke marvels at how well the path is laid out. "There's no way I'll get lost now," he says confidently. Eventually, he reaches the storage room and stares at the massive door. "How am I supposed to get inside? This thing's huge." He touches the door, but a red aura flares up, burning his gloves. Zeke pulls back, hissing in pain. Security spell, figures. He sighs, realizing this must be why the Magic Tower and the Archmage of Nirvana got involved later. Good thing I wore gloves or I'd have lost my hand. Frustrated, Zeke asks the system, "Can you open this thing?" The system responds. Administrator request received, contacting the security device. For a moment, it looks like the spell is being deactivated, but then the system updates. Automatic defense deactivation failed, switching to manual defense. Zeke starts sweating nervously, muttering, "Wait, did it just respond to me?" The system casually pops up and confirms, "Yes, I am. Do you have any more requests, Administrator Zeke?" Zeke's mind races. The system can talk? It's sentient? He's not sure if he should feel excited or creeped out. Trying to stay calm, he asks, "Why did you force me to regress?" The system replies, "I cannot answer that question." "Okay, what are you then?" "Cannot answer." "Who made you?" Still cannot answer. Zeke groans, realizing he's not getting any useful information. "Fine, forget it. Just open the door." The system cheerfully replies, "Request confirmed. The grave of the Dragonslayer has been opened." The massive gates creak open, revealing an overwhelming sight. Rows upon rows of treasure chests. Zeke's jaw drops. Are all of these treasure chests? As if anyone doesn't know, he helpfully explains, treasure chests are containers filled with valuable relics and treasures. Finding even one is considered a miracle. Curious, he opens the nearest chest. It's packed with gold and jewels, shining like a dream. "There are hundreds of these," he mutters, eyes gleaming. Without hesitation, Zeke starts grabbing whatever catches his eye, dumping it into his inventory. Then his grin widens as he spots what he came for, a high-compression mana stone. Even better, there are 4 of them. But as he keeps looting, Zeke realizes his inventory is filling up too fast. Frustrated, he spends some points to expand it, but still doesn't have enough room for everything. "Well, guess I'll have to make regular trips here until I graduate," he says with a shrug. Deciding he's done for the day, Zeke turns to leave when something changes. A strange, ominous fog suddenly fills the room. The air grows heavy and a chill runs down his spine. "What the hell is this creepy feeling?" he mutters, cautiously placing his hand on the wall. The wall pulses under his touch, and Zeke instinctively yanks his hand back, but it's already too late. Magic circles light up all around him, glowing ominously. "What's going on now?" he shouts. But before he can figure it out, the circles activate, and Zeke vanishes in a flash of light. Zeke landed somewhere completely different after the teleportation mishap. Looking around, he asked the system, "Hey, where am I now?" The system replied in its usual monotone voice, "The administrator is currently in the home of the Dragonslayer." Zeke raised an eyebrow. "Home of the Dragonslayer? Since when do Dragonslayers have homes filled with coffins? That wasn't in the newsletter." He opened his mini-map to get his bearings. It showed he wasn't too far from his last location, but there wasn't any path leading here. Scratching his head, he muttered, "If there's no path, this must be one of those hidden areas nobody's discovered yet." With a grin, he added, "Lucky me." Curiosity got the better of him, so he approached one of the coffins and pushed it open. Inside, he found a suit of armor. The system chimed in, "You have discovered Dragonslayer exclusive equipment." Zeke inspected the armor, mumbling, "This looks way different from the Golden Age stuff." Then he spotted a hole on the back. "What's this for? A design flaw? Or something cooler?" He pulled out a mana stone from his inventory. "Only one way to find out." With a smirk, he plugged it into the armor. The armor's eyes lit up. Zeke's grin widened, but it quickly turned into a nervous chuckle as the armor began to shake violently. Is this supposed to happen?" The system coldly replied, "Mana overload detected. Explosion imminent." Zeke shouted, "Bro, you're late. It already happened." The system deadpanned, "My apologies." Still reeling from the explosion, Zeke brushed off the soot. "Okay, that was wild. High compression mana stones powering ancient armor? I've got to ask Fanon about this later." He moved further down the path, checking each room. They were all empty, one after another, until he reached the last room. Inside, he found a strange glass cube. The system popped up again. Zeke frowned. "You've got to be kidding me, right? This is insane." Sweat dripped down his face as he realized what was inside the cube. That's the heart of the evil Dragon King Bahamut? Terrakan was nuts to leave this lying around. He felt a chill run down his spine as his hand moved on its own, pressing against the glass. The system announced, The heart of the cursed dragon Bahamut is reacting to the administrator. Zeke's voice turned eerie. Yes, I hear you, he muttered, his eyes blank. I understand. I have no choice. I'll kill them all. Suddenly, his class skill activated, snapping him back to reality. Zeke shook his head, panicked. Wait, what? Kill them all? Why would I even think that? He pulled his hand away, but his right eye had turned completely black. A purple fog began to fill the room as Bahamut's heart glowed brighter. Zeke yelled, What the hell is going on now? The system cut in. Urgent quest, Tarokan's test, defeat the curse of Bahamut's heart to claim ownership of it. Zeke's heart raced as he saw his reflection. Both his eyes were pitch black now. His class skill tried to suppress whatever was happening, but it failed. Voices screamed in his head, Kill them all! Accept us and you will be free! Dropping to his knees, Zeke slammed his head against the glass, growling, Shut up! Freedom doesn't come with strings attached, you morons! The glass cracked under the pressure, shattering as a red aura exploded into the room. Zeke grinned weakly, barely able to stand. The system finally spoke up. Quest complete. You have claimed Tarokan's gift. Zeke groaned as he got to his feet, clutching his chest. Well, that could have been worse, he muttered, glancing around at the chaotic scene. Still can't believe my skill bailed on me back there. What the hell even was that? His body, still reeling from the ordeal, began to heal itself thanks to his other class skills. But just as he thought the worst was over, something strange started happening. The remains of Bahamut's heart began to merge with him. Before he could even process what was going on, a purple glow appeared above him. What now? He asked, staring up at the light. The answer came in the form of a beam shooting straight into his chest. He staggered back as pain tore through him. What is this? He shouted, his voice echoing in the empty room. Pure, dense mana was flooding into his body, more power than he had ever imagined. There was just one problem. He didn't have mana circles to store it. Without a proper place to hold the energy, the sheer force of it was ripping him apart from the inside. If I don't fix this, I'm going to die here, Zeke shouted, panic clear in his voice. Thinking fast, he activated Spirit of the Soul and used the skill seal. Aether began pouring out of him as he tried to form something to contain the wild mana. He concentrated hard, creating what looked like a swirling black hole. All right, he grunted. I'll use my Aether to wrap this mana up and seal it in, whatever this thing is. The moment he started, the room erupted in a massive explosion. The shockwave rattled everything, leaving behind an eerie silence. Smoke filled the space, and for a moment it seemed like nothing had survived. Eventually the dust began to settle, and Zeke emerged, shaky but standing. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. Well, he muttered, I guess I'm alive. Barely. He looked down at his chest and saw something strange. A glowing dragon emblem right where the beam had hit him. Okay. Loki thought I was done for, but what the hell is this? He turned, noticing his reflection in the shattered glass nearby. The emblem was clear as day, pulsing faintly. Before he could figure out what it meant, a familiar status window popped up in front of him. You have absorbed the heart of Bahamut, it announced in bold letters. Zeke groaned. Great, just what I needed. The notifications didn't stop there. They flooded his vision, explaining how his body had been transformed into something called a divine body, and how he now had access to Tarokan's secure library. A quest book and tutorial had also been unlocked. Whoa, slow down, Zeke said, frantically swiping at the air as if to clear the messages. System, get rid of all these pop-ups, except this one. This one looks important. The notification he saved was about opening Tarokan's other dying gift. Zeke couldn't help but smirk. Looks like my ancestor was feeling generous for once. In the middle of the room, a chest appeared. Zeke's heart started racing as he approached it. Is this what I think it is? He whispered, excitement building. But instead of opening it, the scene cut away. Because of course it did. Later, back at the Platinum Mansion, Zeke carefully stored his newly acquired treasures in one of his lockers. "That should keep things safe for now," he muttered. Finally, he opened his status window to check on all the changes. It was packed with so much information that Zeke let out a long groan. "Nope, not reading all of that," he said, shaking his head. "I'll deal with the important stuff later." One thing did catch his attention, though. He had unlocked something called Authority, which gave him control over dragons. Apparently, they could be summoned and would follow his orders. Another feature was his new divine body, which made his physical abilities peak and increased his combat learning speed. "Okay, those sound pretty cool, I guess," he said with a shrug, though the descriptions didn't mean much to him yet. Then he remembered something about Taro-Khan's secure library. Curious, he told the system to open it. Instead of loading any information, the screen just went blank. "What is this? Did it crash?" Zeke grumbled, glaring at the empty display. The system explained that he would need to move to a specific location to access the library. "Would you like the location marked on your minimap?" it asked. "But do I have to go somewhere else just to update this thing?" Zeke sighed. "Fine, mark it." A waypoint appeared, leading to Valhalla, the most prestigious knight training institution in existence. Zeke's eyes widened. "Valhalla? Are you kidding me? That place is so exclusive even I would have trouble getting in, and I wasn't exactly planning on applying." Shaking his head, he tapped on another notification, which activated his quest book. A new tutorial for low-level administrators had been unlocked. As the system prepared to guide him through yet another trial, Zeke sighed. "All right, let's see what kind of nonsense I've signed up for this time." Once everything settled down, Zeke received a new quest. The system explained that completing it would help him grow, and once he finished, he'd be rewarded. Zeke scratched his head and chuckled. Getting rewards for completing quests? Sounds like something straight out of an adventurer's guild. Pretty cool. Before he could dwell on it, the system mentioned something about a tutorial. He blinked as the world around him started to fade, and in no time he found himself in a completely different place. Looking around, he muttered, "Am I being teleported again? No, this feels different. It's like the whole area has changed." Suddenly, he heard a deep growl behind him. Turning around, he saw massive orcs gripping their weapons, their eyes locked on him. "Oh, great," Zeke sighed, glancing down at the status window. It spelled out his objective: defeat the monsters within the time limit using at least 2 different skills. Completing this would earn him points and unlock the system store. "Oh, so this is the tutorial," Zeke said, rolling his shoulders. "Guess it's trying to show me how to use the system. Would have been nice to have this earlier." The orcs didn't wait for him to finish his monologue. They charged, their attacks slamming into the spot where Zeke had been standing moments ago. A shockwave rippled out, but Zeke was already gone, having used swift steps to dodge. "Nice try," he called out, gripping his claymore. With a quick motion, he activated Continuous Slash and dashed past the orcs. A split second later, thin glowing lines appeared all over their bodies. The orcs froze mid-growl, not even realizing what had happened. Then, one by one, they burst into mist. "Wow," Zeke said, examining his claymore. "This thing feels light as a feather. Must be one of the perks of having a divine body. With this, I could probably take down a purple knight without breaking a sweat." The system chimed in, announcing that the tutorial quest was complete. The strange world began to fade, and Zeke found himself back in reality. He blinked, looking around. Was that an illusion? Sure didn't feel like one. The system rewarded him with a critical bonus, a time bonus, 40 points, and access to the system's shop. Zeke raised an eyebrow and opened the shop, only to gape at what he saw. "Every single item here is a rare relic," he exclaimed, practically vibrating with excitement. "I could make a fortune buying and reselling these." Curious, he opened his inventory and found a sell feature, but when he tried to sell his claymore, the system rejected it. "Can't sell this, huh?" Fine, Zeke muttered. The system then offered him an elven dagger for 4 points. He examined the dagger and shook his head. 4 points? That's nothing. I could auction this for 100 gold easy. Still, I'll hold on to my points for now. Who knows when I'll need them? Closing the system, Zeke let out a long sigh. Man, what a day, he said, stretching as he headed for the door. The lights flickered off as he left, muttering, I need some serious sleep after all that. The next morning, Zeke showed up at the research center. Fanon, one of the researchers, looked at him in disbelief. How did you get a high-compression monostone in just one day? Zeke shrugged, smirking. Too complicated to explain, he said. Anyway, let's cut to the chase. How long is all this going to take? Fanon proudly says it's done, and Zeke, sipping his tea, can't believe it was finished so fast. Fanon is more impressed by what Zeke brought him. With a sly smile, Zeke suggests Fanon is a bit suspicious of him, and who wouldn't be? High-quality mana stones like these are rare treasures. Whenever one is found, it's carefully logged in old, fancy books to track where and when it was discovered. But the one in Zeke's hand? Nope, not in the records. Fanon had already checked the encyclopedia. Zeke laughs, calling Fanon too sharp to run a small operation like this. Now that they've confirmed the stone isn't registered, Zeke asks if they can move on. Fanon is shocked Zeke figured all this out. Meanwhile, back at Galleon's workshop, Galleon is trying to fire up his magic brazier. With a glowing magic circle and some mana, the thing roars to life. Galleon is thrilled, and Fanon is equally excited about the improved design. Fanon excuses himself for a lecture, leaving Galleon and Zeke to chat. Galleon gushes about never expecting to see a working brazier in his lifetime and thanks Zeke profusely. Zeke shrugs it off. It was part of their deal. Galleon hasn't forgotten his end of the bargain. He'll make whatever Zeke wants. Zeke opens a chest and reveals a dragon fang. Not just any dragon fang. It's Bahamut's. Galleon is starstruck, practically drooling. He stammers out questions, asking where Zeke got something so rare. Zeke smirks and says, it's a long story. As Galleon freaks out, complete with tears and snot, Zeke calmly says, chill man, just make the sword. Galleon vows to exceed all expectations, even if it costs him his life. Zeke chuckles, remembering that Galleon was always this dramatic. Later, Zeke's back in his room, sighing about the sword-making process. He hasn't seen Dexter since their duel, and it's been a week since he got that note to confine him again. Zeke's starting to feel uneasy when suddenly someone sneaks into his room via the balcony. It's Dexter. He's all kinds of angry, demanding Zeke tell him the truth. Zeke tries to explain that he didn't challenge him again because he wasn't planning to. Dexter, being Dexter, grabs him by the collar and tosses him out the window. Zeke's brain takes a moment to catch up, and then he realizes he's way too high up. In midair, he manages to flip and grab the ledge, but Dexter's right behind him, grabbing him by the throat. Dexter's not buying Zeke's no-challenge story. He counts down, threatening Zeke to tell the truth in 5 seconds. Zeke, ever the wise guy, laughs and sarcastically asks, "Your name's Dexter, right?" Dexter smirks, then tosses Zeke back into the room like he's a rag doll. The ground cracks beneath him as Zeke crashes into the wall. Ouch. Dexter, pleased with himself, reveals his true identity. He's not just any knight. He's Duke Drakkar, a former Black Knight of Drakkar. Zeke's like, "Oh, well, sorry about that, sir." After some back and forth, Zeke admits he was hoping to learn more about Duke's past, but Duke's not interested in talking about it. Zeke notices Duke's fingers twitching. Something's off, and the conversation gets real. A little while later, Duke speaks up, breaking the silence. "So, you already knew about my identity, huh?" he says, raising an eyebrow. "Let me guess, you've been pestering me all this time just so I'd officially take you on as my disciple?" Zeke nods confidently. "Yep, that's exactly why." Duke leans back and laughs, slapping his knee. "Unbelievable, the guts on this kid. All right, if that's what you want, I'll accept you as my disciple." Zeke blinks, completely stunned. "Wait, seriously? Just like that? No tests? No epic challenge? Well, okay. I better accept this before you change your mind." Then Zeke starts rattling off some long-winded formal speech about vows and traditions. It's one of those moments where even the air feels awkward. Duke, clearly not in the mood, cuts him off with a sigh. Nobody does those vows anymore, kid. It's so outdated. But Zeke crosses his arms and stands his ground. Tradition is important. A knight must honor culture. It's a necessary virtue. Duke smirks and gives him a sideways glance. You sly little fox. Thank you, I'll take that as a compliment. Zeke shoots back with a grin, but then his tone shifts. Oh, and one more thing, Master. Duke almost chokes. Master, that's so embarrassing. Just call me Duke, all right? Fine, Duke, Zeke agrees, though his expression is serious now. What made you say yes so easily? You're famous for rejecting almost everyone who asks to be your disciple. Andre, the so-called genius of the century, had to beg for years before you finally accepted him, and now here I am, and you just say yes like it's no big deal? Why? Duke's face lights up with a mischievous grin. Why do you think? Go on, take a guess. Zeke pauses, thinking hard, then nods as if he's cracked the code. It's because I'm a genius, isn't it? During our duel, you must have seen that my potential is way beyond Andre's, right? I mean, it's obvious. Duke bursts out laughing. That confidence of yours is something else, he says, shaking his head. But if confidence was all it took, I'd have chosen that girl from the Turin family ages ago. What I like about you is your tenacity. He leans forward, his tone turning serious. Talent alone won't get you to the level of a red or black knight. Those types, people who've had everything handed to them, fall apart the moment they face real challenges. Zeke nods, realizing Duke is right. You're spot on. Most so-called geniuses who are expected to reach red knight status end up stuck at blue. They just can't handle adversity. Duke stands up, brushing off the serious mood. Enough talk for now. Follow me. It's time for your first lesson. They head to the Western Greenhouse Gymnasium. Zeke looks around in surprise. Wait, there's a gym under the greenhouse? What kind of secret lair is this? Before he can ask more, Duke has him running laps, and running some more. By the time 3 hours have passed, Zeke is gasping for air, his legs feeling like jelly. Can I stop now? Zeke pants, his voice barely above a whisper. Duke finally calls out, stop! Zeke collapses to the floor, thinking the torture is over, but Duke walks over with a strange expression. I've got a question for you, Duke says casually. Go ahead and ask, Zeke replies, too tired to care. Before he knows it, Duke is behind him, grabbing his wrist. Instinct kicks in and Zeke pulls away, backing up quickly. Duke stares at his hand. What's your problem? I was just checking your pulse. Zeke starts sweating nervously. Duke narrows his eyes. I knew something was off about you. Back in the healing room and here in the greenhouse, I couldn't sense a single drop of aura from you. And even after running 500 laps, you're still hiding something. Tell me, can you even use aura? Zeke freezes. Duke's question hits like a thunderbolt. I saw the bronze statue react to you. There was that golden light, too. Something nobody's ever seen. If you can't use aura, then why won't you let me examine your pulse? Thinking fast, Zeke tries to play it cool. It's not suspicion, it's just curiosity, he says, glaring at Duke. But inside, Zeke is panicking. If people find out he can't use aura, he'll be in serious trouble. He decides it's time for an Oscar-worthy performance. He takes off his gloves, revealing his hands, and flickers the lights in the room with his skill. This is proof of my pure-blooded nature, Zeke says, his voice steady. But for some reason, I can't use aura. Duke examines Zeke's pulse, lost in thought. You're something else, kid. For someone your age, you act so mature. But this? It doesn't make sense. You clearly awakened successfully, so why can't I sense your aura? Zeke shrugs. Beats me. Maybe I'm special? Duke squints at him. Special, huh? You're what we call an irregular. An irregular? What's that? Zeke asks, genuinely curious. It's a term for people with unusual abilities, like being able to use both aura and mana, or seeing the future. But irregulars aren't treated kindly, so don't go shouting it from the rooftops. Zeke nods. Fair enough. But why do you think I'm an irregular? Duke crosses his arms. Your insane stamina and recovery. Even internal wounds take time to heal for most people, but you recovered instantly. I'd bet your aura is being consumed constantly, fueling your stamina and regeneration. Zeke blinks. That actually sounds pretty reasonable. Don't worry about it, Duke says, smirking. Aura's overrated. My Gale arts don't even use it. What's Gale arts? Zeke asks, curious. It's a technique I developed myself. No aura needed, just a well-trained body. Duke grins. Watch this. He taps the ground lightly and the entire floor shatters. Then, in a blur, he zips around the room at incredible speeds, leaving footprints everywhere. When Duke stops in front of Zeke, he asks, "Did you catch that?" Zeke's jaw drops. "I think so. Can I give it a try?" "Sure," Duke says, laughing. "You've got confidence for days. Let's see if you've got the skill to match." Zeke crouches down, focusing hard. Then he takes off, perfectly matching Duke's movements, landing only where Duke had stopped. Duke's eyes went wide as Zeke mirrored his movements perfectly. Zeke came to a halt, catching his breath, and smirked. "I see it now. Each step isn't random. It's like a dance with purpose. Attacking, dodging, closing in, pulling back. Every single move has a reason behind it." Duke stood there, dumbfounded. This isn't the same kid from a week ago," he muttered. "What the hell happened? It's like you've gone from a pebble to a mountain. I mean, this is the difference between a puddle and an ocean." Then a grin spread across his face. "You're perfect." Zeke puffed out his chest, grinning cockily. "Well, of course. This just proves I've got the confidence of a black-ranked knight." Duke raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "Oh, please, don't get too full of yourself. Just last week you were practically crying. Now you're acting like the king of the world." Zeke chuckled. "So, are you going to spread the word about my greatness?" "Depends," Duke said slyly. "Keep up that attitude, and maybe I'll keep my mouth shut." Zeke smirked. What kind of black knight goes around gossiping anyway? The scene shifted to the dining hall. Zeke sat at a table piled high with food, happily munching away. "Man, it's already been a month since I started training with Duke," he said to himself. "My appetite just keeps growing with all this intense training. I might eat the whole kitchen at this rate." As he reached for another bite, someone plopped down beside him. It was Andre. "Got a minute?" Zeke didn't even look up. "Busy eating. Talk here." Andre leaned in, his tone serious. "How did you convince Duke to take you in?" Zeke paused mid-bite, smirking. "Straight to the point, huh? Let me guess. You're nervous because you haven't become his disciple yet?" Andre frowned. "That's not it. I just don't get how he picked you." Zeke shrugged. "Honestly, he just chose me. I didn't have to do anything special." Andre's scowl deepened. "Is it because you're a pureblood?" Zeke sighed, setting down his fork. "Oh, here we go. Let me guess, you've got some inferiority complex about this?" Andre didn't respond, but his expression said it all. Zeke smirked. "Look, even if my bloodline got me noticed, Duke isn't the type to pick someone just for that. If anything, me becoming his disciple proves I've got what it takes. Instead of sulking about it, maybe try putting in some real effort. Stand out on your own." Back at the Western Greenhouse Arena, Zeke and Duke watched Andre running laps. "What's his deal?" Zeke asked. Duke chuckled. "Beats me. He showed up begging to stay by my side even if it meant being a servant. Told him he could stay if he ran 300 laps without using aura, and, well, here we are." Zeke blinked. "Wow, I thought he was just some insecure guy, but turns out he's got guts." Meanwhile, in the courtyard, the students of the Draker Academy gathered, buzzing with excitement. "Why are we here?" one student asked. Another replied, "The Patriarch is visiting today." Moments later, a luxurious carriage rolled in, flanked by knights on horseback. A man stepped out, radiating raw power with every movement. The students quickly fell silent, standing at attention. "That's Arthur Draker," someone whispered in awe. Arthur greeted Howard, one of the Academy's heads, with a firm handshake. Good to see you, Howard. Always working hard, aren't you? Howard smiled humbly. Not as hard as you, patriarch. Arthur waved off the compliment, walking up a small hill. He raised his hand, addressing the students. Young Dragonslayers, you are the future of the Drakers. Train hard, push your limits, and remember, your success will bring honor to our name. The students dropped to one knee, shouting in unison, Yes, sir. Later, in a quiet room, Zeke stood stiffly in front of his father, trying his best to deliver the most formal greeting possible. Arthur laughed. Relax, Zeke. Nobody does that greeting anymore. Sit down. Zeke took a seat nervously as Arthur poured tea. I heard you've taken a liking to tea, so I had something special prepared. Go on, try it. Zeke thanked Arthur with a polite bow, but couldn't help wondering aloud, how do you even know what food I like? Arthur chuckled knowingly. There's an old saying, there may be things the Emperor doesn't know, but there's nothing a Draker doesn't. He leaned back, a glint of pride in his eyes. I called you here because I heard Duke took in a disciple. Zeke shifted nervously, scratching the back of his head. Ah, straight to the point, huh? He tried to laugh it off. Well, yeah, the Duke's done me a huge favor. Arthur nodded thoughtfully. It seems that's true. I don't know what your ultimate goal is, but if you're following Duke's teachings— Zeke cut him off, sitting up straighter. It's to become the strongest man on the continent. Arthur's casual demeanor shifted as his gaze turned sharp. Zeke met his eyes, unfazed. I'll become stronger than anyone else, so I can live my life completely free. He set his teacup down firmly, his voice steady. That's my goal. Arthur didn't say a word at first, but then the air around him shifted. The pressure was unreal, like a storm pressing down. Zeke's confidence wavered for a moment as sweat poured down his face. Even a button on his uniform popped off under the sheer force of Arthur's aura. That's astral-souled, Zeke muttered, wide-eyed. The aura that controls every living being within its range. It's the peak of mastery, something only Black Knights can achieve. Arthur grinned, releasing the tension and laughing heartily. Zeke, despite being shaken, looked up with unwavering confidence. Good, Arthur said, raising his tea glass and taking a sip, his aura still lingering faintly. That's the most entertaining thing I've heard in ages. I'll support you and the academy, but don't think that alone will make things easy. Zeke gulped, nodding. So this is what real power feels like. I thought Duke was unbeatable, but you're on a completely different level. Arthur smirked, pulling out a sleek black card and setting it on the table. Here, a gift to celebrate becoming Duke's disciple. Zeke's jaw dropped. A black card? He could barely believe his eyes. Those things are only given to a handful of people. No limit, crazy benefits. I never thought I'd even see one, let alone hold one. Arthur nodded. It's under both our names. Use it wisely. Zeke quickly bowed his head. Thank you, sir. I'll only use it when absolutely necessary. Then he squinted at Arthur. But you're not fooling me. This is just your sneaky way of keeping tabs on me, isn't it? Arthur's smirk grew. Better a card than the Black Marshal Squad, don't you think? Zeke sighed, knowing he wasn't wrong. Arthur dismissed him with a wave. Now go. I'm sure you've got plenty of training to do if you're aiming to be the strongest. Zeke bowed again and left the room, his thoughts racing. As Zeke walked down the hallway, he overheard Duke muttering. Inside, Arthur was sitting comfortably while Duke paced, clearly annoyed. You're unbelievable, Duke grumbled. Arthur raised an eyebrow. What's got you so worked up? You've been ignoring that kid his whole life, and now you're suddenly playing the perfect dad? Arthur sighed. I have responsibilities as head of the household. What I'm doing is perfectly justified. Duke snorted. Oh, sure. Go ahead. Accuse me of defamation. Take me away. He rolled his eyes. You know you're the only person I can vent to. Arthur chuckled, pulling a bottle of fancy liquor from a pouch. Care for a drink? This is red dragon's breath. Duke's mood instantly shifted. Oh, you really do have good taste. As they poured their drinks, Arthur's tone turned serious. Have you noticed how strange things have gotten across the continent? Duke frowned. I've been stuck here at the academy. How would I know? Arthur gave him a look. Don't play dumb. You already know what I'm talking about. Duke sighed. Fine. The Emperor's gone off the rails chasing immortality. He's been searching everywhere for something to make it possible. Arthur nodded. And do you think it's possible? Of course not, Duke scoffed. Magic can make you look young, sure, but true immortality, that's a fairy tale. Arthur leaned forward. I agree. But what if the relic he's searching for is connected to the Elder Dragon? Duke froze. His eyes widened. The Elder Dragon? You mean the relic? And that's where we'll leave things for now. Zeke's journey is heating up, and with the tension between him, Arthur, and the looming mystery of the Elder Dragon, things are about to get wild. What do you think is going to happen next? Will Zeke rise to the challenge, or is he biting off more than he can chew? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your theories. And hey, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe for more epic recaps, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. In a dimly lit corridor, not far from where Arthur and the Duke were engaged in conversation, Zeke remained perfectly still, leaning against the wall. He was carefully listening to their discussion, using his unique ability, soul manifestation hearing. This power allowed him to extend his perception like an invisible wave, reaching into the room where the two men sat. With his eyes closed and his focus sharpened, he picked up every word they exchanged. Inside the room, Arthur and the Duke continued their conversation over drinks. The Duke raised a question about whether the Emperor had already found what he was searching for. Arthur admitted that it was a possibility. The Order of the Black Knights had reported that the object in question was most likely hidden in the northern continent. The Duke took a sip of his drink and expressed surprise, questioning whether the Empire's forces had yet to acquire this information. Arthur, pouring more wine into the Duke's glass, explained that it was only a matter of time before they did. The Duke reflected on past events, recalling how the Emperor, upon ascending the throne, had immediately waged war to unite the continent. The conflict had only ceased after half of the central continent fell under his control. The Duke had once believed that the Emperor would eventually abandon such an unrealistic ambition, but it seemed he was mistaken. He speculated that if one of those ancient artifacts truly had the power to grant immortality, then history would repeat itself. Arthur, taking a slow sip of his drink, confirmed this belief, stating that the continent would once again be consumed by war. Because of the importance of this matter, he had agreed to travel north. The Duke was visibly shocked and questioned Arthur's decision to leave his post, especially knowing how furious the Emperor would become if he discovered this. Arthur, unfazed, simply smiled in a knowing way and admitted that this was precisely why he had arranged this meeting. The Duke sighed, remarking that Arthur was as cunning as ever. The two then clinked their glasses in a toast, and Arthur playfully called the Duke the best. In response, the Duke grumbled about how Arthur always seemed to assign him the most troublesome tasks. Meanwhile, Zeke remained in his hiding spot, listening intently. The prolonged use of his ability, however, took its toll on him. His knees buckled and he collapsed onto the floor, gasping for breath. Sweat covered his face and his body trembled from exhaustion. As he struggled to recover, he began piecing together fragments of information from both his current life and his past one. He realized that he had used soul manifestation for too long, and even though he had absorbed Bahamut's heart, the ability's side effects remained unavoidable. A sudden realization struck him. The artifact he had touched before returning to the past had been connected to the ancestral dragons. He recalled the mysterious voice he had heard before dying and the system message he had seen upon his return. Everything began to make sense. He had stolen the very artifact the Emperor needed to fulfill his ultimate desire. At the time, he had been so blinded by revenge that he hadn't considered the significance of what he had taken, but now it was clear. The Emperor had even deployed his personal unit, the hunting dogs, to pursue him. What puzzled him, however, was the nature of the artifact itself. It had been responsible for sending him back in time, functioning as part of an ancient administrator system. But who had created such a thing, and why? These unanswered questions only deepened his confusion. Leaning back against the wall, still struggling to catch his breath, he realized that he had uncovered more mysteries than solutions. Back in the room, the Duke finished his drink and stood up, preparing to leave. With his back turned to Arthur, he remarked that the meeting had been enjoyable and that he would act on their discussion immediately. Arthur, also rising from his seat, nodded in agreement and expressed his trust in the Duke. The two men then walked in opposite directions down the golden corridors of the academy. Arthur continued his path through the academy until he reached a particular bedroom door. Pausing for a moment, he cast a cautious glance toward the room, sensing something unusual. Inside, Zeke was fiddling with a peculiar stone he had obtained from the dungeons. He pondered whether this artifact was truly the one the Emperor had been searching for, and what connection it had to immortality. Before he could think further, he suddenly sensed Arthur's presence right outside. Reacting instantly, he made his move just as Arthur swung the door open with force. Arthur scanned the room, his sharp eyes surveying every corner, but it was empty. Muttering to himself that it must have been his imagination, he remained unaware that Zeke had jumped out of the window mere seconds before he had entered. Sometime later, Zeke stood in the training hall, gripping his sword tightly. His breathing was heavy as he trained atop the arena, pushing himself harder than ever. Suddenly, Decker arrived, interrupting his practice. Zeke, frustrated, reminded him that he had told him not to disturb him during training. Decker, bowing respectfully, apologized and informed him that another student had come looking for him. Zeke, surprised, asked who it was. He couldn't recall making any friends at the academy, so he briefly wondered if it might be Raina visiting him. However, since he wasn't certain, he instructed Decker to let the visitor in. When the person stepped forward, Zeke studied them carefully, puzzled by their identity. It was Liam Stone. Liam immediately dropped to his knees, pressing his forehead to the ground in a deep bow. Zeke found it strange that someone like Liam would be seeking him out. Before he could even question him, Liam spoke with a desperate tone, revealing his true intention. He wanted Zeke to accept him. Zeke sighed, realizing he should have ignored Liam the last time they met. He asked if Liam was really requesting to become his subordinate. Without hesitation, Liam confirmed his request and swore his loyalty. Zeke then inquired about Jaken, Liam's former master. Liam clenched his fists against the sand beneath him, his frustration evident. With a pained expression, he admitted that he had been abandoned. He then lifted his head, his eyes filled with determination, and declared that he had no other choice. He had to go to Valhalla. Zeke casually placed his hands in his pockets, watching Liam with curiosity. He couldn't help but think about how Liam had been the same in his past life, always obsessed with Valhalla. Once again, Liam pleaded with him, desperate for acceptance. Taking his hands out of his pockets, Zeke dismissed the request without hesitation. He suggested that Liam seek out others for help, mentioning a few names before turning toward the exit. He wasn't interested in taking on a follower, nor did he believe he could help someone get into Valhalla. As he walked, he picked up one of the swords resting on a nearby stand and glanced at his reflection in the blade. Doubt filled his mind. There was no reason to trust Liam. There was always the possibility that he had been sent as a spy by Jaken. The accusation struck Liam hard. His body tensed, and he dug his nails into his legs, visibly shaken. Without hesitation, he reached into his chest pocket, pulled out a dagger, and raised it. A fierce determination burned in his eyes. Without a moment's pause, he sliced off his own ear. Blood poured down his face, dripping onto the floor as he held the blood-stained dagger in front of him. Despite the pain, Liam remained unwavering. He declared his willingness to go to any lengths to prove his loyalty. If it meant cutting out his tongue or even severing his own foot, he would do it without hesitation. His life was no longer his own. He was ready to place it entirely in Zeke's hands. After making his declaration, he carefully placed his severed ear on the ground and stabbed the dagger into the floor beside it, blood pooling beneath him. Zeke looked at him in silence. He hadn't expected such an extreme reaction. The sight of Liam kneeling before him triggered a memory, his own past. He recalled saying similar words when he had once offered his ear in place of his life. The desperation in Liam's eyes mirrored his own from a lifetime ago. It was the look of someone who had been constantly belittled, someone desperate to prove their worth. Liam remained on his knees, repeating his plea over and over. His voice was filled with determination, unwilling to accept rejection. The moment was broken when a sword suddenly flew toward him, stabbing into the ground just behind him. The sudden impact silenced him instantly. Zeke's voice cut through the tension as he presented a challenge. If Liam could withstand a single strike, he would be accepted. A faint smile appeared on Liam's bloodied face, grateful for the chance. Without hesitation, he took his position in the arena. The two stood across from each other, prepared for the duel. Zeke asked if Liam had received proper training, to which he confirmed. Immediately, Liam activated his aura, a powerful energy surrounding him. He believed that enduring a single attack wouldn't be difficult since he, too, had mastered Drakor aura. However, as he stared into Zeke's eyes, an unsettling feeling crept over him. There was something terrifying about the way Zeke looked at him. His gaze was like that of a dragon, fierce and merciless. Sweat trickled down Liam's face as he raised his sword, his breathing becoming heavy. But it wasn't exhaustion. This was the overwhelming effect of Zeke's combat presence alone. Then, without warning, Zeke surged forward, his eyes flashing with crackling energy. Liam rushed to meet him, gripping his sword tightly and putting everything he had into his strike. As their blades clashed, a powerful shockwave rippled through the air. The sheer force of the impact was undeniable. Sparks flew as their weapons ground against each other, both fighters pressing forward in a battle for dominance. The struggle didn't last long. In an instant, one of the swords gave way. Liam's weapon was sent flying, spiraling through the air before landing far from his grasp. He crashed onto the ground, completely overpowered, while Zeke remained standing with his sword still firmly in hand. Liam sat there in stunned silence, his mind unable to process what had just happened. He had been so certain he could endure a single strike, yet he had been utterly defeated in mere moments. Zeke looked down at him with mild disdain, resting his sword on his shoulder. He acknowledged Liam's determination but dismissed his goal as foolish. Valhalla was not something he could achieve. Without another word, he turned away, leaving Liam kneeling on the ground in silence. Liam called out desperately, but Zeke kept walking, lost in his own thoughts. He considered the possibility that Liam had truly been abandoned by Jaqen. If he had still been under his master's protection, he wouldn't have ended up in such a situation. Even Zeke, despite being a direct descendant, had been expelled from the academy. It wouldn't be surprising if Liam faced a similar fate. Just as Zeke was about to leave the arena, something stopped him. He felt a weight holding him back. Looking down, he saw Liam clutching his leg, his head lowered in silent desperation. The sight made Zeke hesitate. Was this dream really worth clinging to? In his past life, Liam had lost everything. Expelled from the academy, his knightly order had crumbled, and yet, despite all of that, he had still managed to reach the Scarlet Realm. He had risen above his circumstances and earned the title of the Mercenary King. Liam's body trembled as he sobbed, tears streaming down his face. His voice broke as he pleaded for another chance, unwilling to accept failure. Zeke stared at him, expression unreadable. Despite everything, Liam refused to give up. After a long silence, Zeke finally spoke, granting him the opportunity he sought. Liam's eyes widened in relief, but the feeling wouldn't last. Zeke firmly planted his sword into the ground, looking down at Liam, who remained on his knees. He agreed to accept him, but under one extreme condition. If Liam truly believed in sacrificing anything for his goal, then he should be willing to give up his right arm. The moment those words reached Liam, his entire body stiffened. The weight of the demand settled in, and his hands trembled. His face turned pale as he processed what had just been asked of him. Zeke watched his reaction closely, waiting to see if he would back down. His voice carried a mocking tone as he questioned whether Liam's arm was truly that important to him. Liam remained frozen, staring at the ground. He muttered something about needing more training, his voice weak and uncertain. Zeke responded without hesitation, telling him that if he couldn't do it, he should leave immediately. Without another word, he turned away and resumed his training, convinced that Liam wouldn't go through with it. As he continued practicing, he expected Liam to walk away. Instead, he noticed Liam moving, but not in the direction of the exit. He was standing tall again, silently picking up the sword he had used earlier. Zeke cast a sidelong glance at him, confused. Instead of retreating, Liam raised the blade and stretched out his right arm, positioning it as if he were about to cut it off himself. A realization hit Zeke like a bolt of lightning. Liam was serious. His eyes widened in disbelief as he immediately sprinted toward him. The sword in Liam's hands began its downward arc, aiming for his own arm. Zeke moved swiftly, striking with his own weapon before the blade could connect. The impact sent Liam's sword flying across the arena, clattering against the ground far from his reach. Liam stood there, stunned. His arm remained intact, but he stared at it as if struggling to believe what had happened. Before he could react, Zeke grabbed him by the collar and yanked him forward, furious. His voice was sharp as he demanded to know what Liam had been thinking. What if he had changed his mind too late? What if the blade had already done its damage before he could stop it? Liam's expression turned sorrowful as he gave his reason. There was something in his life more important than his own arm, something he couldn't afford to lose. Zeke released his grip, stepping back with an exasperated sigh. He warned Liam not to try something so reckless ever again. Loyalty or not, if he pulled another stunt like that, he would be thrown out without hesitation. Liam remained quiet for a moment. Then a spark of realization crossed his face. His lips curled into a hesitant smile, and he asked if this meant he had truly been accepted. Without stopping, Zeke responded in a casual tone, telling him to hurry up. If one of his subordinates was missing an ear, people would start making assumptions about him. Liam's expression brightened, a grin spreading across his face. Without hesitation, he rushed to follow Zeke, eagerly acknowledging his words. Later that evening, the two of them sat at a private dining table. The tension from earlier had faded, replaced by a calmer atmosphere. Liam reached up and touched his left ear, which had been completely restored. The high-quality potion had healed it without leaving a trace of injury. He hesitated before asking if it was really okay for him to use such an expensive potion. Zeke casually lifted his teacup, taking a sip before responding. He explained that it wasn't an act of kindness, but an investment in Liam's potential. As long as he proved himself useful, the cost didn't matter. After placing the cup back on the saucer, Zeke leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. His gaze sharpened as he asked the real question. What exactly was more important than Liam's own life? Liam's expression darkened. His fingers curled tightly around his wrist as he finally answered. It was his mother. A few days after being abandoned by Jaqen, he had received devastating news. His mother had collapsed from a sudden, severe fever. Although the fever had passed quickly, strange red spots had begun to appear all over her body. Day by day, she was growing weaker. The village healers had no answers. They didn't even know the name of the disease afflicting her. Liam lowered his head onto the table, his voice filled with frustration and helplessness. Zeke observed him in silence, piecing together the reason behind his desperation. It made sense now. Liam's goal wasn't simply to reach Valhalla for prestige or recognition. He was aiming for the academy because of the unparalleled medical benefits provided to its students and their families. The treatments available there were the best on the continent. If he could get in, he could save his mother's life. Zeke picked up a fountain pen and began writing on a piece of paper. As he wrote, he repeated the symptoms aloud in his mind. Red spots resembling roses, periodic high fevers, and overall weakness. These were the signs of a disease he recognized immediately. It was the red flower disease, an illness that would spread across the central continent in 5 years, causing widespread devastation. Many would die before a cure was eventually discovered, finally putting an end to the deadly epidemic. After finishing his notes, Zeke carefully folded the paper and handed it to Liam. The paper contained the exact recipe for a cure. The ingredients were not rare, and even an average village healer should be able to prepare the medicine without difficulty. Liam took the paper with shaky hands, barely able to believe what he was holding. He stammered out his gratitude, but couldn't help wondering how Zeke knew about a disease that even experienced healers had no knowledge of. The cure had been created by two brilliant alchemists, Al and Jeff, who had developed it to save the central continent from ruin. However, before they could distribute it freely, the Alchemist Guild had seized control of the formula, using it to exploit desperate people and amass incredible wealth. Enraged by their greed, the two brothers had later revealed the recipe to the public, making it so widely available that even mercenaries like Zeke had learned about it. Of course, Zeke couldn't explain how he truly knew about the disease, so he simply gave a vague response, implying that he had connections with an alchemist. Now that Liam had the cure for his mother, there was no longer a reason for him to pursue entry into Valhalla or remain under Zeke's command, but Liam refused to leave. He stood up immediately, his eyes burning with determination, and declared that he would not abandon Zeke. He had already pledged his loyalty and would serve him for the rest of his life. Without hesitation, Liam dropped to one knee, bowing his head in complete submission. Zeke smirked at the display. Having someone like Liam, who would one day become the feared mercenary king, as his subordinate was an incredible advantage. A vow of loyalty from someone like him was no small matter. However, Zeke made it clear that he wouldn't wait for him to catch up. If Liam fell behind, he would be left behind. Liam responded immediately, acknowledging Zeke's words with confidence. By the time the sun had begun to set, painting the sky in hues of orange, the Draker Academy's director sat in his office, listening to a proposal from one of the cadets. Owen, standing with his head bowed, suggested that the difficulty of this semester's evaluation should be increased. The director, taken aback by the unexpected request, asked why. Owen explained that this year's first-year students were exceptionally skilled. Many came from influential families, and among them were even 2 pure-blooded awakened. If the test was too easy, it wouldn't be able to properly measure their abilities. The director pondered for a moment before nodding in agreement. The suggestion was logical, and it was exactly the kind of reasoning he expected from a descendant of the Zeman family. He assured Owen that he would take the proposal into serious consideration. Once Owen had left the office, the director leaned back in his chair and let out a sigh. His thoughts drifted to another promising cadet. The similarities were undeniable. He could see traces of a particular individual in the way this student thought and acted. Given the potential dangers ahead, perhaps it was best to eliminate this threat before it had the chance to grow. On the day of the semester evaluation, the academy grounds were bathed in warm sunlight. The trees surrounding the school swayed gently in the breeze, casting dappled shadows across the training fields. This test was a unique part of Draker Academy's curriculum. In pairs, students were assigned a dungeon and had to escape within a set time limit. However, the difficulty of these dungeons varied greatly, and which one they received was purely random. Zeke had been paired with Liam for the evaluation. As they stood at the entrance, waiting for their turn, Zeke noticed Liam's tense expression. Though he tried to hide it, his nervousness was evident. Zeke reassured him that feeling a little nervous was natural. Too much fear led to mistakes, but too little confidence resulted in arrogance. The right balance of both would keep him sharp. Nearby, other students waited for their names to be called. Raina, another cadet, took a deep breath as she observed the entrance. Then, the examiner's voice rang out, calling for Zeke Draker and Liam Stone. Without hesitation, Zeke stepped forward, with Liam following closely behind. Just as they were about to enter, the examiner raised a hand, signaling for them to stop. Zeke and Liam exchanged glances before looking back at the examiner, who gestured toward another entrance. He instructed them to go in that direction instead. The entrance they were now assigned to had an ominous presence. Strange noises echoed from the darkness beyond, making it clear that whatever lay inside was far from ordinary. Zeke narrowed his eyes in suspicion. Something about this situation felt off. However, he chose not to question it. Instead, he simply stood there, observing the examiner. The examiner, tilting his head slightly, urged them forward, asking why they were hesitating. Seeing no other option, Zeke sighed and moved toward the eerie entrance. With a lantern in one hand, he stepped down into the darkness, leading the way. Liam followed close behind, his grip tightening on his sword as they descended into the unknown. Both Zeke and Liam carried their backpacks and swords as they moved deeper into the dungeon. The only available path guided them forward, and they remained alert despite the controlled nature of the test. Since the Drakers oversaw these dungeons, there was no real threat to their lives. However, the challenge lay in escaping within the set time limit. Each team was given a timer that started the moment they entered the dungeon. Every pair had exactly 96 hours to find an exit. Combat was also a factor in the evaluation. Defeating monsters and bringing back their heads would earn them extra points, but the primary goal was survival and escape. If they failed to leave the dungeon before time ran out, they would be disqualified immediately. After several hours of walking, Zeke and Liam reached a suitable spot to rest. They set up camp and had a quick meal. Once they finished eating, Zeke suggested that Liam should sleep first. Liam hesitated, feeling that it was unfair since Zeke had handled most of the work, but Zeke reassured him that he didn't need rest and could stay awake for the full 4 days if necessary. With no further argument, Liam accepted and lay down inside the tent. Zeke promised to wake him immediately if anything happened. The campfire crackled softly, casting flickering light across the rocky walls of the dungeon. Zeke sat beside the fire, his gaze fixed on the timer. It had been 16 hours since they first entered the dungeon. He had pushed himself too hard before the exam, training for 3 days without sleep, meaning he had already been awake for nearly 90 hours. While his ability allowed him to recover from physical exhaustion, it did nothing for his mental fatigue. In an unpredictable environment like a dungeon, carelessness could be fatal. He decided that, as soon as Liam woke up, they would switch shifts. A faint ringing sound suddenly echoed through the silent dungeon. Sharp and clear, it cut through the air like a blade. Zeke's eyelids grew heavy, and before he could fight it, exhaustion overtook him. In an instant, he was standing in the middle of a raging snowstorm. A large metal bell hanging from an archway swayed in the wind, its piercing chime filling the frozen air. Beyond it, a massive mountain loomed over the landscape. Snow and blood stained the ground beneath him. A pale hand rested motionless in the snow, belonging to a woman with long golden hair. Her body lay still in a pool of crimson, flames rising around her. The heat of the fire burned against Zeke's face, jolting him awake. His heart pounded as he rubbed his face, trying to shake off the lingering effects of the dream. Then he froze. The sound of a bell was still ringing, but it was real this time. Something was approaching. Acting quickly, he grabbed a nearby water flask and poured it over the fire, extinguishing it instantly. The light vanished, leaving them in darkness. Zeke grabbed his sword, turned toward the tent, and shouted for Liam to wake up. There was no time to waste. They were not alone. He warned Liam not to use any lamps, as visibility would work against them if their enemies could see in the dark. Liam immediately stepped out of the tent, his sword already drawn, ready for battle. Meanwhile, Zeke positioned himself near the entrance of the hall they were in, pressing against the wall and listening intently. He considered using his Dragon's Eye ability but decided against it. With the test lasting 4 days, he needed to conserve his strength. Instead, he allowed his natural vision to adjust to the darkness. Then, a familiar scent reached his nose: sulfur. His breath caught for a moment. A creature with the smell of sulfur that hunted in packs could only mean one thing: hellhounds. These beasts were classified as level 3 danger monsters, far beyond what should have been present in a controlled dungeon test. Something was wrong. In his past life, a student named Raina had brought back orc heads during this evaluation. There had been no mention of hellhounds. He gripped his sword tighter and listened carefully. That was when he noticed another unsettling detail. The vibrations in the ground were too strong. Even the leader of a hellhound pack would not be this heavy. His instincts screamed at him. Whatever was approaching was far larger than any normal hellhound. He extended his sword slightly past the wall and used its reflective surface to get a glimpse of what lay ahead. When the creature finally came into view, his suspicions were confirmed, and a curse escaped his lips. A massive force struck the wall beside him, shattering it instantly. The impact sent him flying across the hall, his body barely able to withstand the shock. Before he could hit the ground, Liam rushed forward, placing himself between Zeke and the enemy, raising his sword in a defensive stance. Zeke used his own weapon to slow himself down, stabbing the ground for support. As he stood back up, his mind raced. This wasn't just a coincidence. Someone had manipulated the dungeon's setup. The Zeman family. He had suspected they were scheming behind the scenes, but this confirmed it. They weren't just trying to make the test more difficult. They wanted him dead. The smoke from the destroyed wall finally cleared, revealing their enemy. A towering gray-skinned giant loomed before them, its enormous hand gripping something, a severed wolf's head. Flames licked the edges of its mane, indicating that it had recently torn apart a hellhound. The creature casually tossed the head aside and raised its weapon, a massive club, before slamming it into the ground with terrifying force. Zeke and Liam stared in disbelief. A troll. Trolls were level 1 danger monsters, far beyond the challenge of typical dungeon evaluations. They were powerful enough to devour hellhounds and orcs with ease. But what made them truly dangerous was their regenerative ability. Their blood was a crucial ingredient in healing potions, allowing them to recover from wounds at an astonishing rate. Liam instinctively moved in front of Zeke, preparing to fight. Meanwhile, Zeke tried to understand the situation. Why was a troll here, and why had they been specifically led to this dungeon? The answer was obvious. This wasn't an accident. Someone had deliberately set them up to face an opponent they weren't meant to survive. Liam quickly made his decision, gripping his sword tightly and positioning himself in front of Zeke. His stance was firm as he prepared for battle, ready to protect his lord. His plan was simple. He would act as bait, drawing the troll's attention while Zeke escaped. He was fully prepared to sacrifice himself if necessary. Zeke, however, had no intention of running away. With a small, confident smile, he stepped forward and lightly tapped Liam's chest, signaling his trust. Instead of retreating, he turned and stood back to back with Liam, making it clear that he had no plans to abandon him. He believed in Liam's abilities and reminded him that he was not weak. With that reassurance, Liam's hesitation vanished and a determined expression crossed his face. Without wasting another second, Liam launched himself toward the towering troll, his blade cutting through the air. Zeke followed closely behind, covering him from any unexpected attacks. As they closed in, Liam delivered a series of precise strikes, his sword slicing through the troll's thick skin. Zeke observed his movements carefully, noting how Liam targeted the creature's joints. It was an impressive strategy, considering the troll's naturally tough hide. Liam had clearly taken the time to study monsters and their weak points. The troll, overwhelmed by their combined assault, dropped to one knee, struggling to maintain its balance. However, it was far from defeated. With a deep, guttural growl, the creature swung its massive club toward Liam in a desperate attempt to retaliate. Seeing the incoming attack, Zeke immediately sprang into action. He leapt toward Liam and intercepted the blow, deflecting the club with his own sword. The impact sent the troll's weapon flying into the distance, leaving it unarmed. Liam turned back, feeling a pang of guilt for nearly getting himself hit. But Zeke remained focused, keeping his gaze locked on the troll. He acknowledged Liam's effort, remarking that for a first real battle, it wasn't a bad performance. Striking the joints had been a smart move, but the mistake was underestimating the troll's regenerative ability. Minor wounds would heal almost instantly, making small attacks ineffective. The only way to truly bring the creature down was with a decisive, powerful strike. The troll, now furious, raised its massive hand, preparing to crush them. Zeke, realizing that Liam was still too inexperienced to handle such an opponent alone, decided to end the fight himself. His eyes darkened with determination as he prepared his next attack. In a single, swift motion, Zeke's blade sliced cleanly through the troll's neck. The creature's massive head tumbled to the ground, blood pooling beneath it. A notification appeared before Zeke's eyes, confirming his victory. The system message informed him that he had earned 30 karma points for defeating the monster. Wasting no time, he knelt down and grabbed the severed head, recognizing its value. Troll heads were valuable trophies, and this one would provide a significant bonus in the evaluation. He instructed Liam to store it properly. Without hesitation, Liam took out a brown storage bag which had been provided alongside the test timer. Though it wasn't as efficient as a subspace bag, it was good enough for carrying their collected loot. Liam carefully packed the troll's head while Zeke reviewed his system notifications. A new mission had appeared, titled 2 Birds, 1 Stone. The objective was to hunt 100 monsters from 10 different species within 72 hours. As a reward, all karma points earned during the mission would be doubled, and he would receive 2 random rewards. Zeke's interest peaked immediately. The chance to earn double karma points was an opportunity too good to ignore. He checked his current progress. So far, he had already hunted 2 different monster types with a total of 14 kills. With 71 hours still remaining, the time limit wouldn't be a major issue. However, Finding 10 different species in the dungeon could prove difficult. Test dungeons usually contained only 3 or 4 types of monsters, but since this dungeon had clearly been tampered with, there was a chance that more species were hidden within. If they searched thoroughly, they might be able to complete the mission and still escape within the time limit. Closing his system interface, Zeke turned to Liam, who had finished packing their supplies. Everything was secured, and they were ready to move forward. Without wasting another moment, Zeke resumed walking, reminding Liam not to fall behind. Liam, carrying multiple bags filled with loot, quickly followed. Over the next several hours, the two of them encountered numerous challenges. At one point, a pack of hellhounds surrounded them. However, they worked together seamlessly, cutting down the beasts with precise teamwork. Once the battle was over, Liam swiftly stored the hellhound heads in the collection bag, while pools of blood spread across the dungeon floor. Further ahead, they encountered another wave of creatures, this time giant bats. The flying monsters attacked in groups, screeching as they swooped down to strike. Despite their speed and unpredictable movements, Zeke and Liam managed to eliminate them without difficulty. Once again, Liam collected the trophies before they continued deeper into the dungeon. As the battles continued, Liam found himself slowly adjusting to the reality of combat. After one particularly intense fight, while packing the latest batch of monster heads, he reflected on the experience. Zeke noticed this and asked whether he was getting used to fighting real enemies. Liam hesitated before answering, unsure of how to describe his feelings. Zeke reassured him, stating that it was natural for it to take time. Adjusting to real battle wasn't something that happened overnight. However, despite their steady progress, Zeke couldn't ignore the countdown ticking away on his mission timer. The remaining time displayed just under 50 minutes. The progress bar showed that they had collected heads from 9 different monster species, totaling 99 kills. Only one more was needed to complete the mission. He glanced at the evaluation timer. There were still 79 hours left before the test officially ended. While they had more than enough time to escape, finding the last required monster species could be a challenge. Looking around the dimly lit dungeon, Zeke's sharp eyes scanned the area for any sign of movement. If the dungeon had been manipulated, then somewhere within its depths, the final missing species was waiting, and Zeke was determined to find it before time ran out. Zeke glanced around carefully, taking in the murmurs and commotion around him. People were reacting differently than before. In the past, they used to mock and belittle him, but now the atmosphere had shifted. He had done something that caught their attention, something significant. The Zimmons family had even gone as far as manipulating the test dungeon in an attempt to eliminate him. That kind of interference wasn't something just anyone could orchestrate. He considered the possibility that Owen had acted alone, but quickly dismissed the idea. Even someone like Owen wouldn't dare to tamper with an official academy test. That meant it was likely someone higher up, perhaps Zimmons himself. The fact that they were watching him so closely was both troubling and revealing. If he continued hiding his true strength, it could backfire. For now, he decided to play along and observe their movements carefully. As he walked toward the exit of the testing area, a voice called his name. He stopped immediately and turned to see Reyna approaching with her 2 vassals. She walked straight up to him, her expression serious, and stated that he had won this time. Without waiting for a response, she turned and left with a group of people. Zeke stood still, hands in his pockets, watching her disappear into the crowd. Her words echoed in his mind. "I won?" He wasn't entirely sure what she meant, but it left him with a lingering curiosity. Later, in his personal training room, Zeke stood at the center of the arena. He opened his system window and examined one of his available skills. It was a dragonkin ability named Gluttony, currently at level 1. The description indicated that it allowed him to eat and digest large amounts of food. Unlocking it required 50 karma points, and he currently had 780. Sitting down on the floor, he reflected on the skill. He had ignored it until now because it seemed completely useless. 50 points was a small cost, so he decided to activate it. As soon as he did, the description of the skill changed. The updated details revealed a hidden effect. When in gluttony mode, everything consumed could be digested and converted into energy. Additionally, if he ate a monster with a bloodline ability, he would be able to absorb its power. A slow, mischievous smile spread across his face. This was an unexpected discovery. The ability to absorb a monster's skill could be invaluable. He regretted not activating it before the test. Now, he needed to experiment with the energy conversion aspect to fully understand its potential. Pulling a piece of monster meat from his inventory, Zeke activated gluttony and took a bite. Immediately, something strange happened. The meat slipped from his fingers, as if drawn by an invisible force. A trail of dark liquid followed it as it fell, merging with the shadow cast at his feet. His shadow had transformed. It was no longer a normal shadow, but a thick, black liquid, spreading outward like ink in water. The meat sank into the darkness, disappearing as dark flames flickered around it. Zeke observed the phenomenon with fascination. The way the meat was being absorbed reminded him of a swamp swallowing whatever touched its surface. A moment later, his system displayed a notification, replenishing lost energy with absorbed energy. A golden glow surrounded him, and he immediately noticed the change. His headache vanished, as if he had just woken from a short, refreshing nap. The exhaustion clouding his mind disappeared. Not only that, his entire body felt reinvigorated. His mental fatigue, physical tiredness, and even the depletion of his ether core had all been restored to some degree. Without hesitation, Zeke activated the skill again. He pulled out more pieces of monster meat, eating them and tossing additional chunks into the shadow. Each time, the same process repeated. The dark liquid consumed the food, and his energy levels were restored. This ability was far more valuable than he had initially thought. The risks of using his other abilities could now be minimized. Mental exhaustion could be relieved through gluttony, and with his infinite energy ability, he didn't experience physical fatigue at all. That meant he could train without stopping, 24 hours a day, without the need for food or sleep. Realizing the potential of his nearly limitless stamina, Zeke's eyes shone with excitement. He could push himself further than ever before. Just as he was about to begin an intense training session, something interrupted him. A presence made itself known outside the room. Moments later, a series of knocks echoed against the door. Zeke sighed in mild frustration, already knowing who it was. The voice on the other side belonged to Decker. He had warned him before not to disturb his training sessions, but Decker insisted that this was important. Zeke listened as Decker revealed the reason for his interruption. His sword was finally ready. At that moment, any irritation vanished. A satisfied smile appeared on Zeke's face. This was something he had been waiting for. Without delay, he left his training room and headed straight for Galleon's workshop. Upon arrival, he wasted no time and asked if his sword was finished. Galleon, the blacksmith, confirmed that it was and instructed him to wait while he retrieved it. In his past life, the sword he had received from Galleon had been crafted from a blend of mithril and pure iron. It was a legendary weapon, Graham, a long sword that radiated a golden light. Its intricate details resembled the sun, giving it a divine appearance. Anyone who laid eyes on it could tell that it was no ordinary weapon. Now, standing in the workshop once more, Zeke awaited the moment he would finally wield it again. Zeke had provided a dragon's fang for the blacksmith to use as material, expecting the result to be similar to his old sword Graham. However, the weapon that lay before him was nothing like what he had imagined. The blade was pitch black, radiating a dark and eerie aura. As Galleon carefully lifted the sword from a box lined with red fabric, Zeke felt a sense of unease. This was not the Graham he knew. Taking a firm grip on the hilt, Zeke lifted the sword and studied it closely. The blade extended far beyond his height, yet its design remained deceptively simple. Something about it felt unfamiliar. He ran his fingers along the edge, noticing that it lacked the sharpness he expected. When he asked Galleon if the blade had been intentionally dulled, the blacksmith explained that this was its natural form. Zeke returned the weapon to its velvet-lined box, deep in thought. If this was the shape Galleon believed suited him best, then there had to be a reason. The blacksmith hesitated before confirming that it was indeed the case. Unlike most people, who would likely question the sword's unusual appearance, Zeke seemed to understand that there was more to it than what was visible. Galleon then mentioned something unexpected. The sword had yet to be named. He admitted that although he had tried, no name seemed fitting. Instead, he asked Zeke to name it himself. Zeke was caught off guard by the request. The legendary sword Graham had been named by Galleon in his past life, yet now, the same blacksmith claimed he was unable to name this weapon. It reinforced the idea that this was not just a new version of Graham, but an entirely different sword. Crafted from the fang of a dragon, this blade had a completely unique nature. After a moment of contemplation, Zeke pulled out a dagger and made a quick decision. He needed to do something before naming the sword. Before Galleon could react, he pressed the dagger's sharp edge against his arm and made a small incision just above the wrist. The blade cut through his skin with ease, and blood began to drip from the wound. The blacksmith immediately panicked, urging him to stop and treat the injury. However, Zeke remained calm. His body naturally possessed a healing factor, so any wound would close almost instantly. He focused on controlling this ability, issuing a command to his system. A message appeared before him, confirming his request. Administrator request confirmed. Class skill, healing factor will be temporarily deactivated. A faint green glow surrounded his arm as his healing ability paused. Satisfied, Zeke directed his attention back to the sword. The fresh blood from his wound dripped onto the black blade, spreading across its surface. Galleon, still watching in shock, began to recognize the ritual taking place. This was an ancient dwarven tradition known as the sword naming ritual. A rare and nearly forgotten practice, it required the wielder to imbue the weapon with their aura or mana through their own blood. Once the ritual began, the participant would enter a deep unconscious state, wandering through an endless void until they discovered the true name of their sword. Zeke closed his eyes, his consciousness slipping away as the ritual took hold. Within his mind, he found himself in a vast, endless sea of darkness. Names floated around him, each one formed from drops of blood, rising and falling like waves. Countless names appeared before him, each representing a different path, a different destiny. As he continued sinking deeper into the abyss, he searched for the one name that resonated with him. His feet finally touched the surface of the blood-colored waves, and from the depths, a dark presence emerged. A black substance rose, revealing blood-red characters forming a single name. A shadow passed over him, a massive figure looming above. The shape of a black dragon took form in the sea of consciousness. This was the name of his new sword, Bahamut. The system registered the weapon's name as Black Sword Bahamut. Slowly, Zeke's consciousness returned to reality. His eyes fluttered open, and before him, the black sword hovered in midair. Crimson shadows swirled around the blade, giving it a menacing aura. A small smirk formed on his lips as he adjusted his gloves. Out of all the names he could have chosen, he had selected the name of a feared and cursed dragon. The choice made him question what was hidden deep within his own subconscious. Realizing that Zeke had awakened, Galleon hurried over with a first aid kit. The blacksmith was in awe, expressing his amazement that Zeke had knowledge of such an ancient ritual. Even among the dwarves, very few knew how to perform it. Zeke simply shrugged, explaining that he had learned about it while studying dwarven history. As he looked down at his bandaged arm, a rare thought crossed his mind. It had been a long time since he had last needed bandages. His healing ability had made injuries meaningless, but this ritual had required him to suppress it. A small pile of blood-stained bandages rested on a nearby table, a reminder of his brief moment of vulnerability. Galleon then stood before him, bowing slightly as he mentioned that there was something else he wished to give him. Zeke was intrigued but agreed to wait while the blacksmith retrieved whatever it was. As Galleon searched for the item, Zeke turned his focus back to his arm. The experiment had been a success. The ability to deactivate a passive skill had greater implications than he had initially thought. If he could control his healing factor, it meant he could also conceal his abilities when necessary. This was valuable information. There was no need to reveal everything about himself to others, especially not to those like the Duke. For now, he decided to keep the bandages on as a disguise. However, there was something even more important that required his attention. He needed to examine his new sword properly. He directed his gaze toward Bahamut, the dark blade resting nearby. With a flick of his hand, he opened his system interface and checked the weapon's description. Black Sword Bahamut. a sword forged by a master craftsman with mystical insight, using the strongest fang of the cursed light dragon Bahamut. Property: indestructible, the blade cannot be damaged or broken under any circumstances. Aura conversion: can convert the user's aura into a specialized energy form. Sealed special resource: additional abilities will unlock as the wielder grows stronger. Reading through the details, Zeke's mind raced with possibilities. This was no ordinary weapon. Unlike Graham, which had been powerful but straightforward, Bahamut had hidden potential waiting to be unlocked. A new sword for a new path. And this was just the beginning. Zeke carefully examined the details of his new sword, his lips curling into a smile as he read through its abilities. The most intriguing part was the seal that would unlock as the user grew stronger. He had never encountered a weapon like this before. The fact that it was made from a dragon's fang already made it remarkable, but its indestructible property pushed it beyond belief. However, what caught his attention the most was the sword's aura conversion ability. As he gazed at his own reflection in the black blade, memories of the effort it had taken to forge this weapon surfaced in his mind. It had been a long and arduous process to convince Galleon to create a magical circuit within the sword. The blacksmith's talent was undeniable, but there had been another reason for Zeke's determination: his deep understanding of aura conversion. This was not just any ability. Aura conversion was unique in its function, allowing the transformation of mana, ether, or any form of energy into pure aura. Zeke had always struggled with aura, being born without the natural ability to wield it, yet it was precisely this limitation that had driven him to reach the rank of Red Knight. Closing his eyes, he tightened his grip on the hilt. The sword responded instantly, releasing black flames that flickered around him. Energy surged through the blade, converting his ether into a cayenne blue aura. The glowing bonds of aura extended outward, wrapping around his body and the sword's tip. The sensation was overwhelming yet thrilling. At that moment, Galleon re-entered the room, scratching the back of his head with a sheepish smile. In his hands, he held something carefully wrapped. He apologized for taking so long to find it. However, as soon as he stepped forward, his eyes widened at the sight before him. The entire room seemed to hum with energy, the air thick with the presence of concentrated aura. His gaze locked onto the sword, now enveloped in a clear, shimmering aura. The blacksmith's expression shifted from surprise to deep admiration. He recognized what this meant. Zeke had already surpassed the level of a purple knight. Reaching such a stage so quickly was unheard of. Zeke simply rested the sword on his shoulder, glancing at the blacksmith with an amused look. This sword was far beyond what he had anticipated, and he couldn't help but acknowledge Galleon's craftsmanship. Stepping closer, Galleon dismissed the moment as unimportant, claiming that the real challenge had been forging the sword itself. Instead, he directed Zeke's attention to the item in his hands. Unwrapping the cloth, he revealed a sword sheath. It was crafted from black material with intricate golden details decorating its surface. The design was refined, yet sturdy, and it felt as though it held its own hidden power. Zeke's interest was immediately piqued. As he studied the sheath more closely, he searched for a signature or marking that would reveal its maker. The craftsmanship was exceptional, unlike anything he had seen before. Then, his eyes landed on the inscription near the base of the sheath. His expression froze. The name written there was Gol Rinyober. Shock coursed through him. He had never heard Galleon mention this name before, not even in his past life. Yet there was no mistaking it. Gulrin Yober was not just any blacksmith. He was a legendary figure, the greatest blacksmith on the continent. His skills were unparalleled among the dwarves, and his creations were considered masterpieces. Weapons and armor forged by Gulrin were so rare that they were worth tens of thousands of gold coins to collectors. Zeke turned his gaze toward Galleon, who stood watching him with a satisfied expression. It was now clear that Galleon had once been an apprentice of the legendary blacksmith. The realization made him view the man in a new light. When Zeke mentioned Gulrin's name aloud, Galleon beamed with pride, impressed that Zeke could read the ancient dwarven script. However, Zeke knew that if this sheath had been crafted by Gulrin, it was no ordinary accessory. There had to be more to it than just holding a sword. He voiced his suspicions, and Galleon responded with an enthusiastic nod. Without hesitation, the blacksmith demonstrated the sheath's true nature. Pressing a small button near the sheath's opening, he activated its hidden mechanism. In an instant, the sheath unfolded and transformed into a shield. The new form was just as magnificent as the sheath, with a black center and golden accents along the edges. Galleon explained that it was made from mithril and wyvern bones, materials known for their durability and resilience. It could withstand most attacks, making it a highly versatile piece of equipment. To return it to its original form, all one had to do was lower the button on the handle, and the shield would shrink back into a sheath. Galleon extended the transformed sheath towards Zeke, his tone sincere. This was not just a sheath or a shield. It was his personal gift to Zeke. It was his way of expressing gratitude for everything Zeke had done for him. For a moment, Zeke remained silent, observing the blacksmith. The item in front of him was worth an unimaginable amount of gold, yet Galleon had chosen to give it away freely. He commented that with the money from selling this sheath alone, Galleon could. Zeke carefully lifted the sheath, turning it over in his hands. The craftsmanship was beyond anything he had ever encountered. As he examined it, he realized it exceeded even his highest expectations. A rare and powerful artifact like this was not something he had ever imagined possessing. He silently acknowledged its true value and the thoughtfulness behind the gift. The blacksmith's skill was extraordinary, and the gesture was not lost on him. Later, back in his private training grounds within the kingdom, Zeke took time to inspect the various items he had acquired. His hands were now fitted with black gauntlets made from an unfamiliar material. As he flexed his fingers, he noted their lightweight nature and surprising durability. He analyzed them through his system's interface, and the details appeared before him. The gauntlets were crafted from meteoric iron, a rare and incredibly tough metal. However, what stood out the most was that they had no immediate unique ability. Instead, the system hinted that a hidden ability would only activate once the full set was equipped. This revelation intrigued him. The item had come from one of the random boxes he had received as a reward from a previous quest, and while he had initially treated them like mere treasure chests, the contents turned out to be far more valuable than he had anticipated. Turning his attention to another item, Zeke retrieved a small wooden chest adorned with golden details. As he unlatched the lid, his eyes widened at what lay inside. Unlike a weapon or armor, the contents were unexpected. A worn, brown piece of parchment covered in faded lines. Upon closer inspection, he realized it was a map. A moment later, a notification from his system appeared before him, confirming that he had discovered something significant. The map contained traces related to a name he recognized immediately: Kaiser. The mention of that name sparked a series of thoughts. If this referred to hero King Kaiser, then it was connected to one of the most legendary figures in history. Kaiser and the Knights of the Clock Tower were said to have founded the brilliant kingdom of Kronos. The tale was widely known, yet many dismissed it as mere fiction due to the lack of historical records. But if the system recognized this map as genuine, then the Hero King had truly existed. As Zeke tightened his grip on the fragile parchment, more system notifications appeared. The interface began analyzing and restoring the damaged sections of the map. After a few moments, the system announced the completion of the restoration process, and a new projection appeared before him. The updated map revealed 2 red markers, each accompanied by precise coordinates. These locations pointed to an area he recognized instantly: the giant mountains in Middle-earth. That region was well known as the land of the barbarians. Realizing where the map was leading him, Zeke understood that this would not be an ordinary journey. He closely examined the series of notifications that continued to appear, revealing new information. One particular notification caught his attention. It indicated the completion of his tutorial phase. The system acknowledged his progress and declared that he had moved beyond the initial stages. This confirmation left him momentarily uncertain, but before he could process the full implications, another message followed. A new quest had been identified. The objective was clear: to uncover Kaiser's secret technique hidden within the ruins marked on the map. There was no time limit for the quest, but the reward was something he had not anticipated. the elevation of his system authority from elemental system administrator to intermediate system administrator. The realization struck him. The tutorial had been a structured guide designed to push him to a certain level. But now, that phase was over. The real challenge was beginning. The rewards had also become far more significant. If this was just the beginning of what lay ahead, then he was eager to see what else awaited him. With renewed determination, Zeke formulated his next move. His first priority was to use the skill points he had accumulated. He decided to invest 50 points to unlock level 2 draconic abilities. Once unlocked, new options became available for him to choose from. The first ability, Dragon Scale Armor, enhanced his natural defenses. It caused his dragon scales to harden and develop powerful magical resistance, making him far more durable in battle. The second ability, Dragon Claw, allowed him to summon a massive energy claw capable of devastating attacks. Each ability required 80 points to activate. Zeke took a moment to consider his options. He had built up a significant number of points, but he was uncertain when he would have such an opportunity again. While it was tempting to spend everything, he decided to allocate his points carefully, selecting only the 2 most valuable abilities while reserving 400 points for future use. After making his selections, he immediately tested his new abilities. Activating Dragon Claw, he felt a surge of energy flow through his arm. Flames erupted around his hand, forming into an enormous spectral claw that extended far beyond his physical reach. Taking a battle-ready stance, he swung the claw downward with full force. As it struck the ground, the sheer impact tore through the terrain, carving deep craters into the earth. The raw power behind the attack surpassed his expectation. Next, he activated Dragon Scale Armor. Holding his Bahamut sword in one hand, he raised his other arm, now covered in shimmering golden scales. He brought the sword down with all his strength, aiming directly at his own arm. As the blade struck the reinforced scales, it was instantly deflected. The impact caused the sword to rebound, flying back from the force. Examining his arm, Zeke noted that the scales provided complete protection without the need for additional armor. Even without using aura, his natural defenses had reached a whole new level. The realization made him grin. This ability was essentially full-body armor that required no equipment at all. With these new powers at his disposal and a clear goal ahead, Zeke felt more prepared than ever. The path before him was no longer about basic survival. He was stepping into something far greater, and he was ready to face whatever challenges awaited him. Zeke moved his shoulders in slow, circular motions, stretching as he walked. He analyzed his newly acquired abilities, noting how well they complemented each other. One ability provided offense, while the other focused on defense. The way they functioned felt natural, making it easy to transition between attacks and protection. With his body warmed up and ready, he prepared himself for what lay ahead. On another day, inside the central training hall of Draker Academy, students stood in orderly rows, listening intently to their instructor. The upcoming midterm examinations included a practical aura test, and before the assessment began, the instructor explained the rules. Behind him, several training mannequins were set up, specially designed to withstand basic physical attacks. The instructor made it clear that using raw strength alone would not be enough to damage them. However, by properly channeling aura into their strikes, the mannequins could be cut with ease. He warned the students that failure to leave even the slightest mark would result in immediate disqualification. Those who failed would have to start their training over from the beginning, unable to advance further until they mastered the basics. This announcement sent shockwaves through the group. Students whispered among themselves, concerned about what this meant for their progress. The realization that failure would set them back significantly caused unease to spread through the crowd. The instructor quickly silenced them, calling out the first student's name. Alan was the first to step forward. Meanwhile, another student, Owen, observed the situation with a smug expression. He understood that those who were chosen first might struggle due to their nerves. However, he remained confident in his own abilities. His family, the Zimmons, had played a key role in developing the aura training methods taught at the academy. This gave him an edge over the others, even those with naturally gifted abilities. His gaze shifted toward 2 individuals in particular, Reina and Zeke. These were the only ones he considered potential threats. However, he remained certain that they wouldn't be able to match his mastery over aura. When his name was finally called, Owen stepped up to the training area. The instructor gave him permission to begin at his own pace. Without hesitation, he drew his sword and smirked. His aura surged through his body, gathering in his blade. A burst of wind spread around him as he unleashed sword resonance, a powerful technique that amplified his strikes. The watching students were astonished. Few could believe that someone as young as Owen could already wield such an advanced technique. Among the instructors, one turned to his colleague and pointed out the remarkable skill being displayed. The second instructor acknowledged it but remained unfazed, knowing that Owen's talent was expected given his lineage. With his aura fully channeled, Owen charged at the training mannequin. His sword sliced through the air in rapid succession, leaving visible cuts on the mannequin's surface. He didn't stop after the first strike. Moving swiftly, he continued his assault, attacking multiple mannequins in quick succession, ensuring that each one bore clear marks of his technique. When he finally stopped, he stood in the center of the training ground, surrounded by mannequins marked with numerous slashes. The instructor examined his work and expressed admiration for his skill. Given his current level, the instructor predicted that it was only a matter of time before he surpassed one of the most respected swordsmen in their academy, Sir Abel. However, Owen's reaction was not what they expected. Instead of appreciating the compliment, he pushed the instructor's hand away and walked off, his expression dark with frustration. The instructors were taken aback by his attitude, commenting on how rude his behavior had been. The examination continued, with each student stepping forward to demonstrate their ability. Despite their nerves, every participant managed to concentrate their aura and leave marks on their designated mannequin. Some struggled more than others, but ultimately, none failed the assessment. As the last student finished, the instructors discussed the overall performance of the group. They noted that many seemed intimidated by Owen's earlier display, yet despite their fear, all had successfully demonstrated aura control. The special class was filled with talented individuals, but even among them, some stood out as exceptional. One of those individuals was Reina. As she stepped into the training area, she bowed respectfully before taking her position among the mannequins. However, instead of immediately beginning the test, she made a request to the instructors. She wanted to be evaluated based on dragon-slaying techniques. The instructor hesitated, explaining that this ranking system was reserved for more advanced cadets. However, Reina insisted that she understood the challenge and was willing to take the risk. Hearing this, Owen closed his eyes and smirked to himself. He viewed Reina's decision as nothing more than arrogance. Since she had awakened as a pureblood, she had become overly confident in her abilities. However, he believed that she was underestimating what was required to wield dragon-slaying techniques effectively. Unlike basic aura-infused attacks, dragon-slaying techniques required precise control over aura output. Each move demanded a carefully adjusted flow of energy, and maintaining such a level of concentration was no easy task. Owen was convinced that Reina would not be able to sustain her aura for long. At most, she might manage 1 or 2 strikes before her energy dissipated. In his mind, her eagerness to compete with him would ultimately lead to her downfall. Despite the difficulty of what she was attempting, Reina remained unwavering. The instructor crossed his arms and reminded her that the conditions for failure would be much stricter. If she accepted, she would not be allowed to proceed unless she successfully demonstrated the technique. Without hesitation, Reina confirmed her decision. With that, the instructor granted her permission to continue. Reina Turun drew her sword with precision, lifting it high as the blade gleamed with a powerful glow. The atmosphere within the training arena shifted instantly, the weight of her aura pressing down on everyone present. The students fell silent, their attention locked onto her every movement. Holding her sword with both hands, Reina allowed the aura to surge through her body, channeling it into the weapon. The energy pulsated across the blade's surface, crackling with intensity. Without hesitation, she lunged forward and delivered a devastating slash to the first training mannequin. The impact shattered the structure effortlessly, sending fragments flying through the air. Reina continued her advance, moving swiftly from one target to the next. Each strike was precise, cutting deep into the mannequins, splitting them apart with ease. she transitioned seamlessly between attacks, her aura-infused blades slicing through the test units as though they were made of paper. As she reached the final mannequin, she thrust her sword forward, piercing through its core. A moment later, the entire row of dummies erupted into pieces, engulfed in flickering blue flames. The remnants of her assault scattered across the arena, leaving behind only dust and broken fragments. Standing in the midst of the destruction, Reina lowered her sword, her expression calm and composed. The students watched in stunned silence as the dust settled. Some murmured among themselves, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. Many had assumed Owen was the strongest when it came to aura control, but after seeing Reina's display, they realized how vast the gap truly was. Even those who had considered themselves competitors suddenly felt no sense of rivalry with her. Owen stood frozen, his expression twisted with frustration, his hands clenched into fists, his teeth grinding together as bitter thoughts filled his mind. He had been so certain of his superiority, yet Reina had just proven that she was on an entirely different level. As if to confirm his insignificance, Reina slowly raised her sword again and pointed it in the direction of the watching students. At first, Owen thought she was issuing a challenge, perhaps even mocking him for his earlier confidence. However, when he followed the line of her gaze, the truth hit him like a heavy blow. She wasn't acknowledging him at all. Owen's stomach twisted in dread as he turned to see where her blade was aimed. Standing at the far end of the arena was Zeke. Unlike Owen, who was seething with anger, Zeke simply smiled in response, his expression filled with excitement. Without exchanging a single word, the two understood each other. Reina had chosen him as her true rival. The atmosphere in the arena shifted once again as all eyes turned to Zeke. He let out a small sigh, scratching the back of his head. He hadn't intended to draw this much attention, but at this point, ignoring Reina's silent challenge was impossible. With a casual yet confident tone, he stepped forward and addressed the instructors. He requested to be ranked under the dragon-slaying art, just as Reina had been. His words sent a ripple of surprise through the audience. The lead instructor narrowed his eyes as he approached Zeke. There was a sharpness in his expression, a silent question in his gaze. Did Zeke truly understand what he was asking for? Reina had made it look easy, but dragon-slaying techniques required an immense level of control. If Zeke was merely acting on impulse, he would be setting himself up for failure. A second instructor stepped in before the conversation could continue. He acknowledged Zeke's request and confirmed that the same conditions applied as they had for Reina. If Zeke was willing to accept the challenge, he would be judged accordingly. Zeke's expression remained unwavering. His eyes burned with determination as he agreed without hesitation. Meanwhile, the instructor who had initially questioned him turned to his colleague in confusion. He had been unaware of Zeke's background, and it seemed absurd that a cadet who had barely attended any formal training sessions would be given such an opportunity. The second instructor explained that Zeke had won a bet against instructor Andre, which had granted him special privileges. Not only that, but he was an unprecedented golden light pureblood awakener, a rarity in itself. Additionally, he had broken Sir Abel's record in the dungeon escape exam, proving his strength beyond doubt. Zeke stepped forward, focusing his energy deep within his core. As he activated his power, a vortex of ether gathered in his chest, glowing with intense light. The Bahamut blade reacted instantly, detecting the surge of energy and activating its aura conversion feature. A blazing aura spread along the length of the sword, burning with vibrant blue flames. Zeke's grip tightened as he adjusted the output of energy. He had to be careful, not to hold back too much, but also not to overwhelm himself with raw power. Across the arena, Reina's expression shifted, her sharp gaze locked onto Zeke's form, recognizing his stance. She could hardly believe what she was seeing. It was unmistakable. Zeke was preparing to use the dragon-slaying art. Not just any form of it either. This was Chapter 1, First Verse, the posture for cutting through the heavens. The aura surrounding Zeke pulsed rhythmically, wrapping around him like living energy. His blade carried the distinct signature of the technique, its flames dancing in harmony with his controlled movements. Reina's mind raced as she processed the implications. His level of mastery was not just impressive, It was comparable to instructor Andri's. Zeke remained composed, stepping forward with effortless precision. As he moved, his sword cut through the training dummies in smooth, fluid motions. Each strike left behind an afterimage of burning energy, marking the mannequins with deep, glowing trails. The execution was flawless. For Zeke, this was nothing new. He had spent 2 years perfecting the dragon-slaying art before returning to the academy. Every movement, every step, and every shift in his aura had become second nature to him. He no longer needed to think, his body simply responded. When the final slash was delivered, he came to a stop. The training mannequins crumbled into pieces, the remains illuminated by the lingering energy of his sword. He studied his weapon for a moment, contemplating how much he had used. Though he had grown weary of the technique after so much repetition in the past, returning to the basics still held some value. If nothing else, it was sure to provoke a reaction from Reina. As he finally sheathed his sword, murmurs spread throughout the arena. Students whispered to one another, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Some speculated about Zeke's power level, comparing him to high-ranking knights. Others questioned whether he had truly wrapped his sword in aura, or if there was something more to his strength. Zeke turned slightly, observing the stunned faces around him. He had expected some level of attention, but the overwhelming reaction made him wonder. Had he gotten too carried away? The training hall buzzed with murmurs as students struggled to process the shocking revelation. A first-year cadet had achieved the rank of a purple knight, an unheard-of feat. Some stared in disbelief, while others exchanged nervous glances. Among them, Owen stood frozen, his fists clenched as frustration boiled inside him. The truth crashed down on him, an unbearable weight that left him silent. His body trembled as he grasped his arm, a feeble attempt to steady himself. Though he fought to maintain composure, the sting of humiliation threatened to break him. Nearby, Reina tightened her fists as well, but her reaction was different. A spark of excitement flickered in her eyes. At last, she had found a true rival. Shortly after, Zeke was summoned to the director's office. The atmosphere inside was calm, the faint aroma of tea lingering in the air. The director, seated in his chair, studied Zeke with an unreadable expression. He acknowledged the boy's remarkable performance in the semester exams, highlighting results that far exceeded expectations. Zeke, seated across from him, responded with apparent modesty, dismissing his achievements as mere luck. The director, unconvinced, considered his words carefully before proposing something unexpected: an opportunity to take the class advancement exam. The implication sank in. Advancing beyond his current year was a rare opportunity, and depending on his performance, he could move ahead even further. The system existed for extraordinary cadets, those who demonstrated potential far beyond their peers. Zeke's gaze fell on the cup of tea before him, his thoughts racing. He had drawn attention faster than expected, but the situation played into his hands. Without hesitation, he accepted the challenge. Leaving the office, he walked through the academy halls, hands tucked into his pockets. His mind churned with possibilities. The director's motives remained unclear, but for now, he decided to go along with the plan. Meanwhile, back in the office, the director stared out the window at the sunlit grounds of the academy. Reaching into his shirt, he retrieved a small blue stone and whispered 2 names: Reina Draker and Zeke Draker. Both had awakened their true potential and were set to face the upcoming test. After a moment of contemplation, he placed the stone back and leaned into his chair, deep in thought. The next day, the advanced aura training hall filled with an air of anticipation. Reina stood with an expression of boredom, arms crossed as she waited. Beside her, Zeke avoided eye contact, shifting slightly as he sensed her gaze. The tension between them was broken by the sound of approaching footsteps. The examiner entered the hall, a man with platinum blonde hair clad in the royal guard uniform of the Drakor family. A katana rested at his waist, a clear sign of his immense strength. The emblem on his chest marked his status, far above that of an ordinary knight. Recognition flashed in Zeke's eyes. The man before him was no ordinary warrior. He was known as the Blade of Decline. The sight triggered a memory. A barren desert stretched endlessly under the scorching sun. A lone figure trudged across the sand carrying an unconscious body in his arms. The lifeless form dangled limply, unmoving. From a distance, Zeke observed the scene, his instincts on high alert. The knight knelt, setting the body down before beginning to dig with his bare hands. The sight puzzled him until he noticed the crude crosses scattered nearby. An old graveyard, its markers standing solemnly in the desolate landscape. Cautiously, Zeke approached, carrying 2 shovels. Without waiting for permission, he began digging alongside the knight. They worked in silence, the tension between them heavy yet unspoken. Eventually the knight, eyes filled with regret, admitted his past. Once a Draker, now something else entirely. Returning to the present, Zeke studied the man once more. The name Owl Drakor suited him well. Reyna and Zeke straightened, acknowledging their examiner with respect. The weight of the test settled upon them. This was no ordinary challenge. As a high-class knight, Owl stood as one of the pillars of Draker, a figure requiring immense power, influence, and experience. The instructor, standing to the side, explained the exam's structure. It would be a battle of swords, continuing until one participant either lost consciousness or surrendered. Each student was expected to fight with everything they had. Reyna stepped forward, prepared to begin. Before she could act, Owl made a simple gesture, indicating a change in the usual format. Rather than taking turns, both cadets would face him at the same time. A heavy silence fell over the hall. Owl's gaze remained firm, challenging them both. The battle was about to begin.